The FBI and New York police departments are facing new calls to finally open their records related to the assassination of Malcolm X, shot dead 56 years ago at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, February 21st, 1965. This comes after the release of a deathbed confession of a former undercover New York police officer who admitted to being part of a broad New York police and FBI conspiracy targeting Malcolm. In the confession, the former officer, Raymond Wood, who died last year, admitted he entrapped two members of Malcolm's security team in another crime, a plot to blow up the Statue of Liberty, just days before the assassination. On Saturday, Ray Wood's cousin Reggie Wood read the letter at a news conference at the C.O.W.S. Center in Harlem.
It was my assignment to draw the two men into a felonious federal crime so that they could be arrested by the FBI and kept away from managing Malcolm X's Audubon Ballroom door security on February 21st, 1965.
In his letter, Raymond Wood also revealed he was inside the Audubon Ballroom at the time of Malcolm's assassination. At least one other undercover New York police officer, Gene Roberts, was also inside after infiltrating the security team of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, the group Malcolm founded after leaving the Nation of Islam. Both officers, Wood and Roberts, were part of the Bureau of Special Services and Investigations, or BOSSI, a secretive political intelligence unit of the NYPD nicknamed the Red Squad. Following Malcolm's assassination, police arrested 3 members of the Nation of Islam for his murder, but questions about the guilt of the men have lingered for decades. In his letter, Raymond Wood openly says one of the men, Thomas Johnson, was innocent and was arrested to, quote, protect my cover and the secrets of the FBI and the NYPD, unquote. Ray Wood's letter echoes claims in recent books by Manning Marable and Les Payne that some of Malcolm's actual assassins were never charged. In a moment, we'll be joined by Raymond Wood's cousin Reggie Wood, who released his deathbed confession. But first, I want to turn to the words of Malcolm X himself, speaking after his home in Queens was firebombed just a week before his assassination, February 14th, 1965.
My house was bombed. It was bombed by the Black Muslim movement upon the orders of Elijah Muhammad. Now, they had come around they had planned to do it from the front and the back so that I couldn't get out. They covered the front completely, the front door. Then they had come to the back, but instead of getting directly in the back of the house and throwing it this way, they stood at a 45-degree angle and tossed it at the window so it glanced and went onto the ground. And the fire hit the window, and it woke up my second oldest baby. But the fire burned on the outside of the house. But had that one gone through that window, it would have fallen on a 6-year-old girl, a 4-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old girl. And I'm going to tell you, if it had done it, I'd taken my rifle and gone after anybody in sight. I would not wait. And I say that because of this. The police know the criminal operation of the Black Muslim movement because they have thoroughly infiltrated it.
Because they have thoroughly infiltrated it.
I said, Johnny, baby, I love you. This town needs fixing, man, 'cause it ain't right. Let's get it together, Johnny. Join our brothers and fight. I said, Johnny.
The Cows, Gus T. Renegade, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Wednesday, January 28, 2026. So I have been told. Here to share constructive information for non-white people, victims of white supremacy. We should be here tomorrow, neutralizing workplace racism, normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and then again on Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And what are we here for on Friday? The Catherine Massey Book Club, 4th installment on the great Char Adams, Black-Owned, the revolutionary life of the Black Bookstore. This is another broadcast. We've had many over the years. We've had our book club for well over a decade at this point. And hopefully, thankfully, we've had a number of programs and guests. I guess you could call it maybe supplementary material. If we read a book that has a lot of constructive information, sometimes we'll go and get even more details to kind of keep in mind as we are reading along. We've only had about 3 installments. I think we've got about 4 chapters or so into Adams' books. We've got lots more great details to go. But that is how we ended up here for today. I guess if I could get one more word in. Oh man, this is also courtesy of the Catherine Massey Book Club. The book and subject matter that we are talking about today in so many ways. The Reverend Jim Jones hovered over all of this for me, and really the only reason because the Catherine Massey Book Club we read was Jonestown, a CIA medical experiment. Now, beyond the fact that there is a temporal overlap between Jonestown, People's Temple, and the subject matter that we're talking about today, whew. Angela Davis, homie of Reverend Jim Jones, so they got correspondence transcript where she's talking to them even once they get down to Guyana, and Jim Jones is great and he's a victim. And if I ever get to chat it up with Angela Davis, Jonestown, that's what we would have to talk about. Then maybe we get to all the other interests. George Jackson, she's had a great life, but Jim Jones. Other overlap beyond Angela Davis. Oh my gosh. Woo. Mark Lane. So important because, I mean, I was going to say, Gusty, I guess some people, if they just now heard the cows for the first time, say, wow, this Negro gets on here and says some outlandish things. Like, even the title of that book was Jonestown, a CIA medical experiment. I say that name, Mark Lane. Woo. The Mark Lane who said that JFK, that wasn't no Lee Harvey Oswald who did this by himself, that we have been lied to by the most powerful white people in the world about this. That Mark Lane, matter of fact, I said the Mark Lane who invented the phrase the magic bullet when they get to doing a forensic analysis of the JFK assassination. That Mark Lane, yes, that Mark Lane is in this matter. The Mark Lane who co-authored a book with former Cows guest Dick Gregory about the Dr. King assassination, where he theorized, no, we've been lied to again. Dr. King was not the victim of no lone assassin. Get out of here. This is another one. And going into all the detail about COINTELPRO and everything else, but that Mark Lane. And then, wow, for this book they talked about the House Select Committee on Assassinations going on in 1978, where Mark Lane was supposed to testify, and he gets snatched away to go where? Guyana, which did pop up in the book as well. Not this book, but in the book about the bookstore. Oh, man, Jim Jones hovered over all, and even just, I mean, dang, the Black Panther Party alone, for that alone. Last one I'll get in for the Jonestown Connect. We just had a listener who say, hey, there were no books published about black people between 1970 and 1985, like big time false. So big time false that I point to that from now on. That's going to be one of my more recent Black Culture is Not Reading Exhibit A. 15 years, you don't think there were any books published about racism? Anywho, one of the mountains of books that were published about racism during that time period Revolutionary Suicide by Dr. Huey P. Newton, mentioned in the book, Jim Jones stole the phrasing from that book once he got to California and applied it to their nonsense in Guyana that this is revolutionary suicide, we're going to kill everybody in the Kool-Aid. And was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? Michael Mayer's reading more important than watching television. That's why they don't want us to read books. Anyway, so we're reading Char Adams, the Black-Owned, about the bookstores. And she mentions at the very beginning of the book, she mentions the FBI's war on black bookstores, an article that was published a few years ago, and how that impacted her research and all the rest of it. I said, wow, we got the article, and then looked, and there's a whole book that I was excited, like, oh wow, we could talk about this as well, like build on what we're talking about with Adams' work, from head shops to Whole Foods, the rise and fall of activist entrepreneurs, because there's a whole chapter on black bookstores there as well, and the FBI's attacks on them and all that, a lot of the information that we're covering in Char Adams' book. So I contact the author of said book, said report. He says, well, we could talk about my most recent book, which I think would be equally important and is very much related to all of this, even Jonestown. Police Against the Movement, the Sabotage of the Civil Rights Struggle and the Activists Who Fought Back. I would even say from that title right there, Sabotage. I just told you Jim Jones totally stole Dr. Huey P. Newton, who is in that book, stole the title of his book and applied it to some, I can't even say nonsense, applied it to mass murder of mostly black people in Guyana that was subsidized by the federal government. That right there, with what they call that, misappropriation of terms. White people come in and take either terms or products, concepts, anything that black people, intellectual property of black people, and then they come and repurpose it for their own devious endeavors, racist enterprises, really. Jim Jones hovering over all of this. Keep that in mind. Jonestown. So the book we're chatting about today, and this was published in 2025, right there with Char Adams' Black-Owned. So if you missed out on both of these, hey, add them to your library. And this would be another reason why I say you should always nab non-fiction books, especially if they reveal information about racism. Get newer books, see if there's new information, new scholarship, new terms, even new lies. Check them out, see if you can get more details. That said, the audio we heard at the beginning today, that was my BFF, Amy Goodman, on Democracy Now!, Amy Goodman, Suspected Racist. That was from February, almost 5 years ago, February of 2021, where she spoke with Reggie Wood about his cousin, Raymond Wood, and the book that Reggie Wood co-authored, The Ray Wood Story. Mr. Wood is mentioned in the book that we're talking about today. So important to get so much detail about the alleged bombing of the Statue of Liberty, and then who was present, these undercover officers. I at least hope people who listen to the cows might be a little bit familiar with Gene Roberts. If you've done any study of the assassination of Malcolm X in February of 1965, you might be familiar with Mr. Roberts. If you read this book, you'll learn more about Mr. Wood, and the pervasive nature of local police departments. This is not J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI and their national operation, which we've talked about a lot. This is the local police departments, what they did in their local jurisdiction, local level, to spy on the local niggers that they are around on a daily basis. Lots of great information, and it's even connected to the bookstores, because they are kind of important, as Miss Adams has told us. In addition to all of the great books that we will try and talk about today, our guest is a professor of U.S. history at the University of Baltimore. I had a robust chuckle when I saw that. Like, oh, our president told us the hellhole Baltimore. Like, oh my God! Sorry, you had to. Anywho, maybe ICE agents coming there perhaps soon make things better. Anywho, we are looking forward to chatting it up about police against the movement. Our guest joining us live, Dr. Joshua Clark Davis. Dr. Davis, are you with us, sir?
Hi, Gus. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your Wednesday evening with us. For listeners who I'm sure this might be their first time hearing from you and hearing about all of your great research, if you'd like to give us kind of a brief bio, a little bit about the work that you do out in Baltimore quickly, that would be great.
Right. So I'm a historian at the University of Baltimore. As you already said, I'm the author of a book called From Head Shops to Whole Foods, The Rise and Fall of Activist Entrepreneurs. There was a chapter in that book about the history of Black-owned bookstores with a lengthy exploration of the FBI's surveillance and targeting of those bookstores. And after I wrote that book, that kind of continued my research interest in government surveillance of activists, especially racial justice activists. But I wanted to tell that story in a different way, not by focusing just on the feds or on COINTELPRO, but by looking at local police and what they did to the civil rights movement, even before folks like the Panthers and Angela Davis, and really trying to rethink that story, not only what the police did to those civil rights activists, but how civil rights activists fought back. Even the ones we thought, oh, they're just singing kumbaya, it's just nonviolence. In many cases, they are resisting police violence, even before the Panthers. And that's not to take away what the Panthers did, but just to say we haven't really reckoned with what the civil rights movement of the early 60s was doing to fight police violence.
Great John Lewis would come to mind as well in there. He's prominently featured in this book as well, as he should be. For folks who have not seen you, Dr. Davis, you are classified as a white man. Is that true?
That is true.
Great, great. For this program, and your book, or really all of your research from what I've seen, deals with racism, white supremacy. Use that term, white supremacy, in your writings. At this broadcast, we start off with all of our guests. I use the term racism and the term white supremacy as synonyms. I use the same definition for both terms. That definition: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you think such a system exists? Do you think that definition is accurate?
It sounds apt. It's, that was a few sentences. Honestly, a lot of people have taken much longer to define that system. But yeah, that sounds like a working definition.
Right on. Any inaccuracies before we proceed? Just kind of making sure. Let me know for sure if any part of it seems inaccurate or if I've left something out important.
No, I don't think so. I think we can proceed with that.
Right on. As a white man, and like I said, the previous article it's kind of an oldie but goodie now, your report about the FBI's terrorism against black bookstores, and then your previous work about entrepreneurs, and then this more recent work published last year. What sparked your interest in kind of the police suppression, COINTELPRO, as a white man?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, one thing that was happening, I wrote that book, From Head Shops to Whole Foods, basically to ask, all right, political activists coming out of different movements in the 60s, a lot of them started businesses, and a lot of them thought businesses, especially storefronts, were ways to advance their movements. Why did they do that? How did it work? Did it work? And so that was kind of the defining question. And then one thing that was coming up with a number of different movement businesses was that many people had memories and references to being surveilled. And so it just kind of kept coming up in interviews. And, of course, I'd heard about things like COINTELPRO and FBI surveillance of the civil rights movement, of the Panthers, but I hadn't heard as much about what government agencies were doing against things like Black-Owned Bookstores. So I just wanted to learn more about that. I wanted to, get the truth about that and to see what I could find in the historical record. In some ways, I was a bit surprised by just how much I found, and even finding the actual letter from J. Edgar Hoover where he ordered every FBI field office in the country to investigate Black-owned bookstores. I mean, that's about as close to a smoking gun as possible. I didn't really imagine it's going to be some letter from Hoover just explicitly saying, monitor these stores and monitor their customers. And so that was a powerful find for me, and it just kind of accelerated my thinking in these directions about, all right, well, let's learn about some different angles of law enforcement surveillance and targeting of activists than the ones that we're much more familiar with. We're much more familiar with the story on King and I think the Panthers and Malcolm X. But some of these kind of foot soldiers, especially when they started businesses, we know less about.
Thank you so much for the answer to the question. People will forgive me. Why does he keep bringing up Jonestown? Well, you did have nearly 1,000 people die, and most of them were black. So, I forgot another overlap, and this is one of the first ones that I brought up when I began to investigate. When you're going to brainwash people, no reading. Jim Jones took books from his victims as well, and he did this before they even got to South America. They would go and look and say, hey, you can't read. And then once they got to South America, they couldn't even read the newspaper. Sound like David Ruggles. We will kill you for trying to get books, especially serious books about racism. We will kill you, or at least keep tabs on you and all of your customers. Woo! Reading is more important than watching television, and especially reading non-fiction, reading about racism. So important. Can't say that enough. Okay. This non-fiction book that you should read, as opposed to The Hate U Give, Police Against the Movement, the Sabotage of the Civil Rights Struggle and the Activists Who Fought Back. Great title. I think I gets right to the point. I guess if I had to get one in about the title, The Sabotage of the Civil Rights Struggle, I guess I was kind of thinking movement. That's what I'm trained to, civil rights movement. You've already got movement in the first part of the title, Police Against the Movement. Why is it the sabotage against the civil rights struggle? Sabotage of the civil rights struggle.
Well, honestly, it's basically the reason you just said, is that I didn't want to have movement in the title twice. If you searched my book, probably the word civil rights movement came up hundreds of times, and other than the title, I guess maybe civil rights struggle only came up a few times. It really was just for varying the prose, but it's a good question. I mean, some historians have started using this term, the Black freedom struggle, as an alternative to the civil rights movement, in the sense that, one, they obviously want to name the fact that black people led it, but also, two, in a sense, to kind of point to all these different activists who were going all the way back to, folks like you said, David Ruggles in the 1830s and 40s. And so, Yeah, civil rights struggle is a different term, but it's kind of interesting the different kind of phrases that historians try to come up with to describe overlapping movements.
Try and see if we can cover as much as we can. So much great detail in the text. I guess for one, you as a historian, University of Baltimore, who was the intended audience for Police Against the Movement? Like, was this something you intended for your history students, for your colleagues, university colleagues in the academy? Was this intended for lay folks like myself, general population? Who did you think was going to be sitting down to read Police Against the Movement?
Great question. So I wrote this. Yes, I am an academic, and this is a deeply researched book, but I really strived to write it without jargon, without, heavy theoretical language, and really to target it at a lay audience in terms of folks who are interested in, yes, the civil rights movement, interested in issues of justice, interested in combating police violence. I started the book in 2017, so Black Lives Matter was already happening, but it was still, 3 years before most people in the world had heard of George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. And so what I was seeing with this movement on the rise, BLM, and I kind of wanted to tell the story of, all right, well, who was fighting police violence even earlier? What did the civil rights movement have to say about it? Because a lot of folks were describing BLM as Civil Rights Movement Part 2. They are continuing the work that was unfinished by the original civil rights movement. These are things the media were saying, not BLM as much. But that just got me really interested. Okay, well, what did the civil rights movement do against police violence? So that's kind of, I wanted to reach a wide audience with this and really to try to change folks' thinking about the civil rights movement and its relationship to the police. I mean, I think we all know some of the most iconic movements or moments of that movement are just terrible footage of white police brutalizing black protesters. And there's kind of this idea that police violence, it happened to the civil rights movement and they couldn't do anything about it. And that was just a huge myth I wanted to take down with this book. So yes, academics, yes, my students, but also a broad lay audience.
Much obliged, much obliged. I guess I'll go to the introduction where you write the overwhelming majority of Americans, it seemed, could not, or I guess I'll pause and restart, forgive. I knew there was a very important point where he said he started writing this book in 2017. He said at that point people did not know about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor at that point. True, but in 2017, the world did know Eric Garner and Mike Brown, and I could probably rattle off 1,000 other names. I just push back on that because this book and many others, like, they suggest that either white people are on the micro ignorant about police terrorizing black people, which is laughably untrue, and or white people are ignorant about racism. That is not true, and it did not take George Floyd or even Eric Garner or Mike Brown. We could, with Eleanor Bumper, she's at the point, we go way back. Like, how far would we like to go back? Like, none of this is new. If I could get our book club one more time, Sundown Town's James Lowen, one of the most important lines in the book where he says police terrorism of black people is expected by white people. This is how we uphold our system so the Negroes know their place. Now, he didn't, that's not, I'm paraphrasing, but oh man, it is very close to that this is not no whoops, we didn't know, we needed George Floyd and Renee Nicole Good to become aware. No, we expect the police. Why do we pay taxes? Nigger knocker, I can pick out lots of them. But anyway, Eric Garner, Mike Brown, I think the world were very aware of all of that, 2014, 2015 respectively. That's it.
100%. Yes, I 100% agree with you. I mean, we had Freddie Gray was killed by police here in Baltimore in 2015. I'm in no way excusing many white people's ignorance, and you were exactly right to point out there was no excuse for the ignorance. Eleanor Bumpurs, Rodney King. We can take it back to slavery, where federal agents were killing enslaved people sometimes, or capturing them, putting them back into slavery. But I guess what I was trying to say was, in 2020, there was an estimated 15 to 26 million people who protested in the United States, and they were thinking it might have been the largest outbreak of protest in the country's history. So, unfortunately, there were a lot of people who waited until 2020 to do something and say something, and that they tended to be white people. It's kind of like what's happening now. It's like some of the people who are finally saying, oh, whoops, maybe ICE isn't that good. Look what happened to this white guy with the gun on his head. Maybe he shouldn't have been killed. And it's like anyone with any fair sense of morality and decency has known for years that what ICE is doing is just reprehensible. But I'm with you. People should have known, but a lot of people, they literally have to see a video of a man being murdered before they are willing to say that's wrong.
Just for the record, just to nuance is important. We are not saying the same thing. Should have known. I'm saying white people do know and approve. This is what is supposed to be happening. In fact, we'll point to the book. I'll get to the point, but just pointing out nuance. We are not saying the same thing. Not should. I'm saying white people do know. Very important. Ain't no ignorance with regards to white people. This book, get to the book. Let's see. Then the sentence that I was going to read and had to pause, my Eric Gardner pause. Lucy's, the overwhelming majority of Americans, it seemed, could not conceive that law enforcement might interact with one group of people differently than another. This is the very beginning of the book when you're kind of getting into things. Who is the overwhelming majority of Americans? Who are you talking about here?
Well, I think stands to reason, and the United States has been, for better or for worse, a majority white country, and throughout most of the 20th century, and now overall population has been 13, 14, 15% African American. And so I do, at different points in that introduction, say this is white people who, in a deeply racist and also deeply segregated nation, clung very tightly to the myth of fair law enforcement. And many of them, because of redlining and because of racial segregation in housing, they had very few interactions with black people, and they wanted it that way. And so one of the things they also wanted to do is to hold up a myth that law enforcement treated different Americans equally. So when I say the vast majority, and I do point to some opinion polls where from that era where it shows, hey, the vast majority of the people responding to these polls claim that American police are equitable, that they treat people of different classes or races equally. And so that's what I was talking about there.
Much obliged, Dr. Davis. And I'm certain that that's true for the time period. There are probably lots of polls. You probably could get a good chunk of polls that would say the same thing now. That line, that sentence, and also what he said, Dr. Davis, about at other points in the introduction and in the text at large, he does get very specific in saying, white people or lots of white people, very specific for sure. With this sentence, it stood out to me just because it's very common for people to conflate America or Americans with white people. Very, very common, and I'm pretty sure that it was not difficult for black people at this point or now to conceive that enforcement officers will beat you down if you're black. I think most of us got that. Maybe not all, but lots of us. We'd be talking about white people. I just think that's one of those where I think pros should not override. If we're talking about white people, identify white people, because they get to hide frequently where we just not identifying the problem. You talk about many police departments. That really kind of stood out to me. And I guess maybe for clarification, I take the position that most people, even most black people that I know, are very uninformed about COINTELPRO, J. Edgar Hoover, the federal campaign to terrorize black people and treat them as suspects, and we got to keep tabs on them and all that. Most black people I know are not informed about this at all. Even though this book is related, it is not the same. This is local police, as you said. So you cover a wide array of jurisdictions, California and New York and Texas, North Carolina, Mississippi. I mean, it is, wow. Did you travel to a lot of these locations? Did you just get on your computer and, get to downloading? Like, how did you research this project that you say it took almost a decade to get put together?
Yeah, nice question. There certainly was a lot of research done online in databases, especially, in 2020 and 2021. But I did a fair amount of traveling as well. I think 3 trips to LA, 2 to Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, multiple to DC, probably half a dozen to New York, Philly. There's a fair amount of travel getting into archives to access materials that are not available online, especially in the few places like New York where there actually are archives of former police surveillance files. Most of those have been destroyed in most cities, but there are a few places where they still exist. Houston is another one. So that was something, to get me traveling, to a different time zone or a different state, would be the prospect of accessing some of those very rare files, which in some cases, I would say to generalize, it's much harder to get a hold of police surveillance files from the 60s compared to FBI files.
Fascinating. That time and energy, just wow, to go all over the continent basically to research all of this. Wow. And it shows in the book, Dr. Davis, for sure. I'm skipping forward a little bit. This is chapter 1, Political Politics, where you write this, the detail. So you write, Parker and Hamilton believed that police departments across the country were hamstrung in their efforts to share information with each other. Together they called for the creation of a federal clearinghouse of intelligence available to any police department that really wants to do something about crime. Hamilton rejected the suggestion that the FBI could assume the responsibility, contending that the Bureau kept most files to itself and, so far, has not been interested in supplying local police with intelligence, even though, as Parker pointedly observed, they are in a good position to assist us. The FBI did not take the criticism lightly, and Hoover, who grew to strongly dislike Parker, saw no need to accede to the Los Angeles chief's demands. Instead, by 1956, Parker and Hamilton set about establishing their own national surveillance network, the Law Enforcement Intelligence Unit. The LAPD officials' basic idea was to create a clearinghouse through which local police departments could share files without relying on the FBI, while the LEIU's stated mission was to share information on organized crime syndicates. Behind the scenes, it embraced the role of collector of political intelligence as well. The Bureau, in turn, dismissed the LEIU in internal memos as workaday police officers who swap information back and forth, have no legal standing, and, in fact, to a degree, may be illegally doing so. but the Bureau didn't publicly condemn Parker and Hamilton's pet project, most likely because it wanted to deflect attention from its own political intelligence work. The LEIU prospered as an exchange network for intelligence on both organized crime and political radicals. There's that word. And by 1962, it had expanded its membership to 63 police departments concentrated in the West and Midwest. That alone, I thought, was pretty staggering. And I mean, even just the date, 1956. This is well before March on Washington. This is even before the Little Rock Nine in Arkansas, before a lot of the things that people think about are really, important moments of the so-called civil rights movement. This is massive. Had you seen information about the Law Enforcement Intelligence Unit before your project?
Not before my project, no. It started coming up early in the project just because, and I think it still exists, but its history is pretty shadowy. I mean, like you just read, it basically was West Coast police who felt like they were being denied intelligence files by the FBI, and so they said, let's start our own unit for sharing intelligence on mobsters and also political activists. And one thing that they've had going for them is that they haven't been a public agency. It's like they basically, police set up this private foundation, so they've been able to shield their history from things like public records laws. But they were really a big thing in California and the West Coast, and we don't know a whole lot about them. But they would show up. They would show up because the FBI would complain about them. They would show up. They were a bit more open about what they were doing in the 50s and early 60s. And then as surveillance became more and more publicly criticized and stigmatized, they kind of receded more into the shadows. But yeah, they kind of bridged the divide between police departments and private detectives, I think, on the West Coast, and did a lot of contracting with private investigators in a way that would probably run afoul of all kinds of laws. But again, private foundations are very easily, they can hide what they're doing from public scrutiny in a lot of ways.
Did I hear you correctly, Dr. Davis? This unit still exists, like right now, 2026? This is still going on?
I believe so. I am not 100% certain, but you can find references to it online still, and you can find, I'm looking at a reference right now on the State of California Attorney General's website where he describes the Law Enforcement Intelligence Unit as an organization whose mission is providing leadership and promoting professionalism in the criminal intelligence community. And that's written in present tense. Now, this isn't dated, but it's on the current California Attorney General's website. So my understanding is, it does still operate.
Wow. That is staggering. Wow. And that's the sort of thing that I talk about when I say, hey, white people are not ignorant about racism. This was started at a time where you had practically no black people on a lot of these police departments. So, this is just trafficking information, organized crime, radical, uppity Negroes, maybe a little bit of both, but white people. And we're informed and we approve. They still have this. Woof, that is staggering. And then to have all of these different departments, like this is before internet and Wi-Fi and cell phones, and they have networked with 63 departments that you said belong. It's departments that aren't even in California. You said they're concentrated in the Midwest, and they figured out a way to traffic and share information well in advance of, we can just log on and send and download and PDF, and they figured out how to network and share all of this information at this 1956. Whew. That is staggering, Dr. Davis, and there's so much more in the text, Police Against the Movement. One quick tidbit before we get to, I guess, this component, because it's important, and that is a part of the book in terms of how non-white people fought back. You have so many passages in the text where black people owning guns, not necessarily saying that they're going to go out to aggressively attack white people, but we will defend ourselves. If the police are spying on us, terrorizing us, working in conjunction with the Klan or other racists to kill us or at least neutralize our efforts and such, we will protect and defend ourselves. And being proud about that, unequivocal about that, you have that in so many different parts of the text. This is chapter 2, Jim Crow's cops, like I said, working in conjunction or sometime they're one and the same. You write, on June 28, 3 weeks after Fred Shuttlesworth issued his challenge to Bull Connor, police paid a visit to Bethel Baptist Church. There they found armed guards defending the Shuttlesworth home and the church, where men from the ACMHR had insisted on standing watch ever since the Christmas Day bombing. The officers confiscated 4 rifles from the sentries and charged them with illegal firearm possession. I'll share one more quick portion where you kind of give some more of the same with armed resistance to racism. Bull Connor relented, likely or I'll give folks a little bit more. Defiant as usual, Fred Shuttlesworth turned the police away, arguing that the Freedom Riders needed medical care, when Bull Connor himself called Shuttlesworth, demanding that he give up the group. The minister insisted that the city book the Freedom Riders hotel rooms if they could not stay at his house. Bull Connor relented, likely understanding that arresting the riders hours after they had almost been killed would attract unfavorable national press. The commissioner may have also been deterred by the armed guards accompanying Shuttlesworth, loyal lieutenants from Bethel Baptist Church who had organized to protect the minister since the Christmas 1956 bombing. Earlier in the day, as reports of the Greyhound attacks reached Birmingham, Shuttlesworth had dispatched an envoy of guards to pick up the riders in Anniston. Equipped with shotguns, the men from his congregation passed a group of hostile white men in the hospital as they picked up the injured Corps members. As Buck Johnson, one of Bethel's guards, recalled, some of them had clubs. There were some deputies, too. You couldn't tell the deputies from the Ku Klux. Heard that many times. But I thought that was so important. I think so, and you talk about this as well, so frequently you just get the image that the black people, Dr. King and Rosa Parks, that they were just peaceful and like Gandhi and prayed and kneeled and just got beaten and bludgeoned. And no, there were a number of this nonviolent stuff will get you killed. I think that's so important and a big part of your book as well, Dr. Davis.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And yeah, this nonviolent stuff will get you killed. Exactly. Charlie Cobb's popular book about how a lot of folks in the movement were carrying guns. And if Dr. King wasn't carrying a gun, he had folks around him who often were. And I think one thing that gets lost in our popular memory is, the Black Panthers were brilliant. I mean, they really were masters of media. They had a powerful political program. They understood how to make a huge splash politically. They understood how to deliver services and mutual aid. They did so much. I think sometimes what we make a mistake of is to think that their political program was just the opposite of the civil rights movement before them. And even if you read some of Bobby Seale and Huey Newton's, memoirs, here and there in certain places, they kind of credit people in the movement who had an influence on them. And so one of the groups was Deacons for Defense. Deacons for Defense, some people think about them as just a group of black men from Louisiana who started carrying guns kind of out of the blue to defend themselves from Klan activity, but they were working with the Congress of Racial Equality, one of the leading civil rights organizations, basically to start armed defense groups because there were towns in Louisiana that were so dangerous for civil rights organizers that they needed armed weapons around them, even if they weren't going to hold them themselves. So, you know, Huey Newton said, yeah, we met the Deacons for Defense, and we didn't agree with everything they did, but they had some good ideas. Huey Newton also heard about things like the Community Alert Patrol, which was a group of people, black folks driving around in L.A., following the police, watching them to make sure they didn't beat on or shoot black residents. And so there's a lineage there where, in some ways, we actually need to credit some parts of the civil rights movement for having had some influence on the Black Panthers, even though the Panthers were also doing their own thing and going in different directions and bold new directions. But they didn't come out of nowhere, I guess is one thing that we might need to recognize.
Long tradition of black self-defense and black people who endorse the right to bear arms. In fact, before I was informed about white people saying no books for black people, I was very aware white people said no guns for black people. I was aware of that first, but hey, no books, no guns, which is even startling to think, are they one and the same? Wow. Reading more important than watching television. You have and I guess even before I transition to the next chapter, collusion, you have an important concept, and I guess to contrast that with black people fighting back, literally, figuratively, even bearing arms, the concept of slow violence, I think, is very important. I've just mentioned Bull Connor and actually Birmingham, what happened to Fred Shuttlesworth and other black people in many, not just the South, in many other regions. But the concept of slow violence, where we don't get the billy club and beat you to death or shoot you. What is your concept of slow violence, Dr. Davis?
So slow violence is an idea. I didn't invent it, but I did apply it. A lot of folks were talking about in different academic fields saying sometimes violence isn't always physical. Sometimes it's a matter of doing harm, where slow systems do harm to people. For example, environmental racism. If disproportionately, trash dumps are put next to black and brown neighborhoods, and then folks in those neighborhoods end up having lower health standards and even sometimes dying from toxic waste, that could be a form of violence. In terms of police and civil rights movement, the slow violence I was trying to bring up was saying not always billy clubs, it's not always breaking bones and shooting and killing people. Yes, police did that, and in no way can we minimize that at all. But police have had a wide arsenal of weapons to use against black people and to use against civil rights activists. And surveillance is one of them. Trumped up felony indictments is another one. Character assassination and defamation is another one, right? And, we're seeing some of these weapons being used right now, again, to, bring up like what ICE is doing. It's like the first thing they said when Alex Preddy was killed was, he was trying to massacre ICE agents, or he's a radical French type, right? That's happened to so many black people who've been shot by police. Just instantly, it's not enough that person has been killed or murdered. Their character has to be assassinated as well. And that is an additional form of violence. Phone tapping, following, trying to silence people with surveillance and intimidation, that's another form of slow violence. And it's not just metaphorical. I mean, these things often work very slowly, right? The drip of having to deal with political surveillance is something that many activists have endured in a way that is very, very harmful.
I'm reminded one of our former guests, Dr. Kenneth O'Reilly. He wrote Racial Matters, the FBI's secret file on Black America from 1960 to 1972, and our current read, Black-Owned, the Revolutionary Life of the Black Bookstore, where you don't even have to be a so-called activist. Just being classified as black can be more than enough to have you end up on one of these files, subject to the all of it. I was just in the bookstore. I was just at the meeting. I was just walking. That can be more than enough. You don't have to do nothing else, no speeches, nothing. Importantly, this is chapter, or I'm just hopping ahead because he talked about slow violence can encompass so many things, and one of the things that he mentioned was what is called environmental racism. I had lots of highlights and read so much of the book I can even connect some of the points, so I'm hopping way ahead just to connect that point. This is in chapter 10, Retaliation, where you write, nearly a month later, on May 15, Friends of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, members immersed themselves in 2 more protest campaigns in Sunnyside, Texas, a middle-class black neighborhood 5 miles southwest of Texas Southern University. Black community members hoped to shut down a toxic sanitation dump, an incinerator where a young boy had fallen into a garbage pit and drowned. After hours of protests, riot police and canine units broke up the picket. That same day, a SNCC contingent organized a demonstration with teenagers at suburban Northwood Junior High, a newly desegregated school where black students were being disciplined much more harshly than white ones following interracial fights. After the crowd refused to disperse, police called in the riot squad, accompanied by dogs. And that pops up so frequently in the text. We've talked about that also many, many times, and the connections all the way back to slavery and the plantation, and the dog usage so iconic in the civil rights movement during this time period. But you talk about the dogs at numerous points in the text. I had a different passage to read, but that was just one with the sanitation. It pops up earlier. This is going back to Alabama, and I'm popping back earlier into the book. This is chapter 4, where you write, although many critics condemn the Alabama city's canine unit as a relic of the Old South, it was actually a product of a new America. For many, attacks by police dogs on black citizens conjured disturbing images from the antebellum era, where bounty hunters pursued escaped enslaved people with bloodhounds. But when Birmingham officers brutalized protesters in spring 1963, their dog squad had existed for not even 3 years. I didn't know that. It was established in June 1960, just months after the sit-in movement erupted that spring. What a coincidence. Though a handful of U.S. police forces had experimented with dogs before, none had sustained a squad for more than a few years before Baltimore police established its unit in 1956. Baltimore's department embraced the role of pioneer, promoting its dogs with an almost evangelical zeal and inviting police from across the country and around the world to visit their department to study their new crime fighting division. Among their disciples was Sergeant M.W. McBride of Birmingham, who completed a 3-month course on dog handling in Baltimore in 1960. Upon returning to Alabama, McBride launched Birmingham's Canine Squad with a dog whose name reflected the department's Confederate sympathies. Rebel. Are you serious? I'll stop there. Great research, Dr. Davis. Just great. But I thought that, the dog had been, part of the police department for about 50 years at this point, and to know, like, this is all new technology. This is pretty much the same time period as the SWAT department was created in Los Angeles, Los Angeles, right, the first time. Mm-hmm. That is stunning, at least to me. I don't know to other folks, but to me, that is stunning. I don't know if that's slow violence, direct violence, a little bit of both. Like, wow. Can you touch on just the timing of all this developing?
Yeah, it was a big surprise to me, too. It was something I really wanted to win on, because I think sometimes it's very easy to trace different forms of police violence and racist policing to the history of slavery, and in some ways that history does connect, but I think if we're not careful, sometimes people can kind of see things that police are doing as, the inheritance of earlier racism. Well, they might say, well, of course, they did that during slavery, so of course they would keep using dogs. And no, actually, in some ways this might be worse, in the sense that modern police in the 1950s were at that point saying, hey, let's use, snarling German shepherds to control people, and especially to police lower income areas and black areas. So they had to intentionally create that. It's not something that was just passed down from generation to generation. It was an intentional effort, and it started in Baltimore, and Baltimore started exporting it to America and the world. But yeah, to me that was really eye-opening, because also it was a sign that, hey, Birmingham, Alabama made these dogs notorious all over the world, but they also learned them from another big city that was, much further north than Birmingham. And so this was a national horror. This was not just Alabama's problem.
Wow. Just wow. Just wow. I would not have thought that at all. Like, white people in Alabama went to Maryland to train their dogs to chomp black people, or at least went to learn these techniques and canine maneuvers. And I'm like, what? I just would not have. But now President Trump did tell us that Baltimore is a hellhole, so I guess to be expected.
Yes, he did.
I do want to rewind, just because I don't know if Dr. Davis knows this or not, but man, I had to be super disciplined the past, 4 days since Sunday, 4 days since Sunday. I had to be super disciplined. I am in Seattle. We are in the Super Bowl. Pooh on Mar Jackson. We are in the Super Bowl again. They were rolling in the streets, shooting guns, acting a fool over their fourth trip to the Super Bowl, literally. While the Seahawks were about to conquest, I was reading Police Against the Movement. I've had people come by and say, what are you doing on your computer? What kind of lame nerd? And you're not even, hey, shh. Police Against, this is important. Police are, and especially when I looked up at the screen, and once they won and they showed downtown Seattle, and it was just blue and red lights flashing everywhere. Police Against the Movement. No way I'm going downtown. So I had to be super disciplined, and then I was rewarded for my discipline. Seattle pops up in this book repeatedly. Like when he mentioned those patrols where they would go around and follow the police that predated the Black Panther Party, I don't want to say proud, but like, man, hey, they were doing that in Seattle too, which I did not know, which predated the Black Panther Party. As my memory recalls, they were not armed, but I mean, hey, which maybe that's even more to be proud about, to go out and do it with no weapon at that time period and go out and be recording and taking information and writing it down. Like, I did not expect Seattle to pop up in this book, so kudos. I don't think you came up here to do research, did you?
I didn't, and I would have liked to, but yeah, that's an important part of the book, basically, where activists in the Congress of Racial Equality in Seattle, it looks like we're the first group in the 60s really to say, all right, we've got to track the police and follow them and literally monitor them, have patrols. And, some patrols very quickly after that popped up in L.A., some in Oakland, but it's like all three of those cities had police patrols before the Panther patrols. And so, again, that's in no way to minimize the Panthers' genius, but really to say there were folks in the civil rights movement experimenting with this idea, and it was a powerful idea, and its power can be seen in how much it spread all over the country and how much the Panthers really kind of used it to propel them to greater national recognition.
Absolutely. I think just one, most importantly, police terrorizing black people has been a problem for a very long time and everywhere. Seattle to Georgia, everywhere. And then, yes, the Panthers, they borrowed some of the good stuff. Everyone, that's what you should do. Any of the good techniques or methods that you find other people using, borrow. See if you can apply it yourself. Intelligent. And it seems like they did a lot of that, borrowing some of the good ideas, good concepts from other black people who were doing things previously, trying to address racism, white supremacy. I guess with kind of going back to one of the points that I brought up before about white people not being ignorant, and even when he talked about them, white people coming from all over the world to Baltimore for their canine training. It even reminded me when we talked about the canines as tools of white supremacy repeatedly before that conversation got global. We even talked about George Foreman, the late George Foreman. He took his German Shepherd, the rumble in the jungle against the late Muhammad Ali. He took his German Shepherd and the black people. He landed in the Congo. They recorded like, oh my God, what is it? Said, oh, they used the German Shepherd to chomp on the black people in the Congo. At that time, Zaire. Oh, maybe, I don't know, maybe some of the white people from the Congo, maybe they went to Baltimore too to train the German Shepherd or get some techniques. And were you going to add something?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, South Africa, apartheid, they had a long history of using these dogs too. So, for all I know, maybe some of the folks in Baltimore were hearing about how these, European colonizers were using the dogs to abuse Africans.
Long history, global system, and a long history. Anywho, and all of that for context for this question. This is chapter 3, collusion. You write the Committee of Inquiry into Administration of Justice into the Freedom Struggle had detailed a disturbing array of attacks on civil rights organizers by police as investigators questioned them with lawyerly attention to detail. Freedom riders shared troubling accounts of officers who had brutalized them in some instances while colluding with vigilante mobs to attack them in others. But most of white America did not seem to care. They dismissed the revelations as old news of transgressions by a few stray miscreants in law enforcement, not evidence of systemic abuses against civil rights organizers, if they noticed the committee at all. This mass indifference prompted an uncomfortable question. Would white Americans ever be willing to contemplate the violence demonstrators for racial equality suffered at the hands of the nation's police? What, if anything, could bring about a reckoning? That's sort of the fact that we're still here. We're still here with this exact same question, and you might even get in trouble for having a book like this at a public university, or at least at Baltimore Public School. You might get DEI'd out of there. That's sort of, you even are asking the question there. One, I point white people are not ignorant. This is, we don't care and or we approve of what's happening. Dare I even say, I've asked a number of our white guests over the years, white people, are they greatly pained about racism against black people? This sounds like the same sort of question, and people wondering, wow, maybe white people don't really care about black people being mistreated. Like, wow, what do we do to solve the problem if that's the case? And I would submit, just because we're at this same point, unless I'm in error all these years later, self-evident, white people do not care about black people being victims of racism. Am I being logical just based on evidence, Dr. Davis?
I guess what I would say is the majority of white people do not care. I think there are some who do care, but I think the majority do not, have not in this country historically. I mean, you know, we can see right now that it's playing out in our politics, and we can see how the majority of white people in this country have been casting their lot politically now for years. But yeah, that was something I was trying to raise a question about, was what happens, and later in the civil rights movement, is in Birmingham, when the police and Bull Connor sick the dogs on the black children who were protesting and turn on the fire hoses, and the cameras are there to record it. That's what literally has to happen for many white people to finally admit what is going on. They literally have to see black people being brutalized on film recordings. In a sense, not unlike the George Floyd video, and with, you know, but yeah, it's just the standard, the bar is set so high for many white people's attention to even register violence against black people.
Context of White Supremacy. Again, our guest, Dr. Joshua Clark Davis, Police Against the Movement. Just came out last year. New book. I will say the great late Rodney King is mentioned in this book as well, way down the road, but he is mentioned in this book as well. And I think a lot of people did see that video, and they got a not guilty, and we still didn't get much change after that one. Just point again, white people seeing video of black people being brutalized by the police, or white people that are not enforcement officers, even then, does not seem to have much impact at all. Maybe the best you can hope for is maybe you get a conviction, but even then, I just said Rodney King. Even then, cross your fingers and And in fact, he's even what you just said, Dr. Davis, he said most white people do not care. Even that. I'm aware of the Freedom Rides. I'm aware of John Brown. I'm aware of Viola Liuzzo. We are going to fast forward to Mike Hannon. Oh my goodness. I had never heard of Mike Hannon until I read this here book. Wow. Just keep in mind what Dr. Davis just told us. I said, hey, white people, and I meant every single one in the universe. And even I forgot, forgive me, on Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. Dr. Davis said the majority of white people do not care about black people being victims of white supremacy racism. There are not that many white people on the planet. 10% less of the population globally, so it's not that many people classified as white in the known universe to be holding this operation together. Out of that, less than 10% global population, he said the majority of them, he thinks, don't care. I think it's total. I think that's what it means to be classified as white. Our dude Mike Hannon, we get to this part of the book, who works for the LAPD. This is a white LAPD officer, and is so important to what we were just talking about, and even important to the context of the book and all of this police surveillance and slow violence. Mike Hannon is a white officer who says, hey, I'm with the LAPD. I didn't grow up around black people. I'm new to all of this. I'm just trying to figure it out on the force. Forgive me for laughing because it's very serious, but let me get to reading so you can hear who Mike Hannon is, learn who he is from Dr. Davis, our guest. He writes, this is in chapter 8, appropriately named traitor. That right there tells you a lot about what does it mean to be white. Traitor. So he writes, when Mike Hannon appeared for the roll call that I have to go back to give you a little bit more. My apologies. In June 1960, Mike Hannon received an outstanding evaluation from his commander, Captain Ed Davis. What a name. Who rated Hannon's performance as very good to excellent and predicted that he would soon make an outstanding officer. Yet, as Hannon's confidence grew, he earned a reputation as a difficult colleague who shared his opinions freely. In summer 1962, Hannon was disciplined for bickering with his peers and given what was thought to be an unpleasant I'm going to do better, I'm sorry. Hannon was disciplined for bickering with his peers and given what was thought to be an unpleasant punishment, an assignment to work with a black partner in one of the department's newly desegregated cars. Like most of his white colleagues, Hannon had long viewed the problems plaguing the Newton district as the fault of its residents, not deeper systemic inequalities. That right there says, anyway, continuing. Unemployment was the natural result of idleness and disposition, lazy. But those views changed as he shared a patrol car with his new partner. My previous experience growing up and working in a white middle-class community, dare I say a racially restricted region, sundown town, growing up and working had been so far removed from the experience of ghetto life that their grievances seemed unreal and exaggerated. Though he had long believed in meritocracy, Hannon learned that in this land of opportunity, the opportunities are largely conditioned and prescribed by the accident of birth. It's not no accident. Working in the Newton district with a black partner politicized Hannon. I began to feel like, well, an officer in an occupation army riding up and down streets in the Negro ghetto. I began to learn how Negroes see police. Hannon told the Black-owned Los Angeles Sentinel. Experiences away from work reshaped Hannon's understanding of inequality as well. In his free time, Hannon discovered KPFK, Los Angeles' fledgling station in the left-wing Pacifica radio network. Hannon loved listening to Art Kunkin, Kunkin, a recovering Trotskyite who hosted the Socialist Party's official show on the station, so much so that he wrote to him and struck up a friendship. By late 1962, he had joined the party. In spring 1963, as police attacks in Birmingham made headlines and ignited outrage around the globe, demonstrations erupted across the United States. In Los Angeles, CORE organized a solidarity protest on May 10. Joining them were members of the Socialist Party, including Hannon and his wife, Sylvia. The march was orderly, the Los Angeles Times reported, and attracted no unusual police attention. When Hannon appeared for roll call the next day, he found a handwritten sign at the station asking him if his feet hurt. Sorry. He recognized it as a crude attempt to mimic African American vernacular English and noted that several officers were acting almost hysterically hostile toward him. Hannon's colleagues viewed the Birmingham police as their comrades That's kind of communist. What do you mean, comrade? You mean friend? Anyway, and they regarded his attendance as at the protest as an act of betrayal. 2 months later, Hannon received a blistering evaluation from a supervisor highlighting his arguments with fellow officers on controversial subjects that included civil liberties and socioeconomic theories. Hannon's direct supervisors had ordered the young officer to avoid joining protests, claiming that they increased the animosity of his fellow officers and sapped the department's resources by diverting his colleagues away from their normal duties. But to his surprise, Hannon's protest activities also made him a few new allies on the force, introducing him to a lot of friends I never knew I had. Some of his black colleagues told him that they admired his willingness to stand for racial justice, making him feel like an honorary member of the black police force. And yet most officers in Newton Division agreed with the report that Hannon's decision to march raised serious doubts about his loyalty. And I will stop there. Forgive the chuckles, but wow, I was so... This section right here, and even the title, I think tells you everything you need to know about what it means to be white. We can just... Why is it titled Traitor, Dr. Davis?
It's called Traitor because Mike Hannon was an extremely rare white police officer who, in the 1960s, began to speak publicly about racist policing, and he was not someone who was surveilling the civil rights movement. He was someone who genuinely became involved in it, joined the Congress of Racial Equality in his free time, and basically once his employers, the LAPD, found out about it, they just went after him and did their best to basically force them out of the department and got rid of him. But it's called Traitor because that's how the LAPD saw him, as a traitor to their profession, and also because that's how a number of white people saw him, as a traitor to the race, as much of the hate mail that he received reflected. So he was seen as disloyal, and that word, in multiple contexts. So he was a fascinating figure to me. I in no way was suggesting that, he was reflective of a larger trend, but it was just extremely revealing to see what happens when a white police officer actually publicly aligned himself to the civil rights movement. And it was just so revealing to see how he was handled as a reflection of the larger police department values. But I would be happy to talk about this all night. We're on East Coast time right now, approaching 9:30, but I would love to do a few more questions with you and then maybe pick it up another time. But I can tell you really, the fact that you put the book over the NFC Championship is a nice compliment. But you guys still have the Super Bowl, so hopefully you won't have any reading going on during that.
We normally broadcast during the game, but yes, hopefully I won't have to read anything. We can just be broadcasting, and we'll get to it with priorities. But I'll prioritize. Thank you for giving me a heads up. I'll see if I can prioritize, because I definitely want to get in about Mr. Wood as well. I think that's so important. But before I depart, Mike Hannon, I too think one of the most fascinating folks that I read in a book that has a lot of interesting people, and it reveals so much about what it means to be white. The point I say all the time: white people cannot be ignorant about racism. Other white people will let you know. Mike Hannon started doing things that were not expected of him as a white person. He found out quickly, and even the hate mail that he got, oh my goodness. He wrote virulent hate mail from across the country poured into Hannon's mailbox, much of it racist. In a letter lacking a return address, Mrs. C.R. Brown offered her opinion that you not only should be kicked off the police force, but tried for treason, and I do not mean maybe. Your 4 children should be taken away from you and put in a school, as they will grow up with no respect for a king. I couldn't even do it. You are a red rat. Another message comes in the form of an unsigned and marginally literate postcard from Chicago telling Hannon that he was a dirty, nigger-loving rat. That's even wild. They both called him. Get of the good police force in L.A. and get some good red-blooded American boy. Have your job. You do not deserve it. Only Americans belong on our police force. See what I mean? American is white, because I know that's what he meant. Police force, not commie rats like you. Go somewhere and drop dead, will you? Do us all a favor, included your family. So I'm like, wow, what does it mean to be white? And that's why I said, like, the white people who do not see things and behave like the majority, which Hannon said he was when he joined the force. He said, I grew up around other white people. I thought those niggers were lazy. He said that. He was not different. He was just like everybody else. He apparently went to core whatever and saw some things and had a change of opinion or what have you, went on to have a lawyer career and all the rest of it, but he was not different from white people at all. According to his own testimony, unless I misread, he had the same racist ideas, thought black people were lazy, and he probably grew up in a racially restricted region. That's just like every other white person, unless I missed it. Did I miss something?
I mean, you're making a good point there. It's, in many ways, Hammond couldn't totally unlearn the racism that he grew up with, but it's just, he was made a pariah in many ways, basically, because he did speak out against racism. So, in many ways, he's the exception that confirms the rule.
Ray Wood, I got to make sure I get him in while we have you before you depart here. I started the segment with Democracy Now! I guess before we get into the specifics of Mr. Wood and the way that black officers were manipulated, used as a part of this local police surveillance, were you aware of Mr. Wood's cousin, Reggie Wood, the book that he wrote about Ray Wood's experience, the Ray Wood story? Were you aware of that book?
Definitely, yes. And I've read it. I've also spoken with Reggie Wood a few times and had wanted to interview him for the book. He spoke to me at length on the phone but didn't want to do a formal interview, I think because he, thought it might scoop his book, and that's fine. So I was glad just to talk with him, but yeah.
It seems Mr. Wood, Reggie Wood, confirmed about his cousin Raymond Wood, who worked for the BOSS unit. This is the New York Police Department, their special investigative unit to go around and spy on black people, maybe even more than that, depending on, the bombing case and what you think about Minister Malcolm X's assassination, but at minimum to spy on, sabotage black people in the greater New York area. Eugene Roberts, I think a lot more people, I was familiar with him. I did not know about Mr. Woods at all, and even his cousin confirmed where you said in the book, where you cited Yuri Kochiyama, who had notes where she said that Mr. Wood was present at Minister Malcolm's assassination, but you couldn't find any other sources. He said he was there and was whisked away from police. So, to get a confirmation, seemingly from Mr. Wood, I guess how do you factor that into your analysis? And I guess if I'm processing all of this correctly for context, make sure we get this in before you go correctly. Raymond Wood, black male, at a time where they don't even have very many black police officers in the country, but black male, he comes to the New York Police Department special unit where they're going to spy on black people in the movement, Malcolm X and such. Raymond Wood is a key figure in the Statue of Liberty bombing case. He's present for the assassination of Minister Malcolm X by his own testimony, and Yuri Kochiyama, who was there. He was present for that, as was Eugene Roberts, a different member of this NYPD spy unit, and Raymond Wood was also a key figure in the Panther 21 trial with Afeni Shakur. If we got all of this correct, this would be one black guy who's on the New York police unit who is a key person in all of these trials, and that bombing case, that happened like 7 days before Malcolm X's assassination in February 1965. If we got accuracy for everything, which is super important, and correct context, Raymond Wood, why is he important? Because he's a big figure in your book as well?
So he's important because we have a very extensive paper trail of what he did to infiltrate the civil rights movement, to impersonate a black activist, to take on that role as a spy, first with the Congress of Racial Equality, and later with these three men, Walter Bowe, Khalil Syed, and Bob Collier, who he ended up basically orchestrating. Basically, federal indictments were based on Ray Wood's work, where he encouraged, prodded, and basically talked these three guys into the idea of trying to bomb the Statue of Liberty. By that I mean he brought them manuals for how to build bombs. He brought them gasoline. He even drove one of them all the way from New York City to Montreal to buy explosives. He did all of that, and he admitted it all in federal court in these prosecutions, although they were never able to, those defendants were not able to successfully mount the idea that they had been entrapped, even though he admitted he did all those things. There's a few things that are really complicated about that Statue of Liberty case. Yes, it is only a few days before Malcolm X was murdered. It still is, to my mind, it's up in the air whether Ray Wood was at the Malcolm X assassination or not. Gene Roberts, who was a similar spy, as you mentioned, he was there 100%, photographed, and he was, one of Malcolm's bodyguards. And yes, he was the one who later infiltrated the New York Panthers and was part of the Panther 21 trial. What's a little bit unconfirmed about Ray Wood is that letter that Reggie Wood produced, it hasn't really been verified. We don't know how he got it, for example. We don't know why other family members don't have it. We don't know why Ray Wood didn't just come clean and say this stuff himself while he was still alive. And, it's a much bigger question, but Reggie Wood was making waves with all of this a few years ago, and he was even connected with Ben Crump, who was going to make him part of the case to get New York State to reopen the investigation. And that reopening of the investigation is happening, but I'm not really sure if Reggie Wood is still involved with it or not. But yeah, there's a lot of different things going on with Ray Wood.
Fascinating. No confirmation whether or not he was there, even though he said, apparently, according to his cousin Reggie Wood, said he was there for the assassination of Minister Malcolm X, but can't confirm. I was saying the same E word, entrapment, for the New York Statue of Liberty bombing case, where he drives them out of the country and all the rest. It's a number of these cases where it's like, man, if it was not for the informant or a spy or whatever, I don't think any of this would have happened. Like, it seemed like it was his idea, and he paid the money to get the car. They didn't have a car. Like, man, this wouldn't have happened if it had not been for the spy informant. I've heard that a number of times for these cases. I guess, but if I could get in one more before you depart us, because I did not know about Morrell McCullough either. As I said, I did know about Gene Roberts and him being confirmed at the assassination of Malcolm X, doing mouth-to-mouth, being a part of the New York Police Department's spy unit boss. I'd heard about him, seen him, all that. I didn't know about Mr. McCullough at all, and to know that this exact same thing happened with Dr. King, where person right there in the photograph is also on one of these Tennessee, same thing, but Tennessee's version of this spy unit go around, and the invaders that were going to go and infiltrate the Tennessee version of one of these radical Negro groups, and to get right there in close grips with Dr. King at the time that he's assassinated. I guess, can you give us some of the information on Morrell McCullough that you uncovered?
Yeah, he's a very fascinating figure. Like Ray Wood, he had grown up in the segregated South, and he moved to a big city. In his case, it was Memphis, and joining the police department seemed like a way to get a good government job. He did that. They assigned him to a secret political intelligence unit in the Memphis police, and they had him infiltrate a group called the Invaders. The Invaders were kind of like the Panthers of Memphis in a sense, and they were, more radical, younger Black Power activists who were making waves in Memphis at the time that Dr. King came there to protest on behalf of the sanitation workers who were striking for better working conditions, better pay. They had a coworker die literally on a trash delivery. Morrell McCullough, as part of the Invaders, he plays a role of this activist, and in the weeks leading up to Dr. King's death, he is around other folks from the SCLC that Dr. King was a part of. He even met Dr. King. Apparently he attended a meeting in Dr. King's hotel room. But what is most eye-opening is that Morrell McCullough was with several SCLC organizers in the parking lot in front of the Lorraine Motel at the very moment that Dr. King was shot and killed. And Morrell McCullough rushed up to the balcony and kneeled over Dr. King as he was dying, tried to help him. And there are famous pictures of Morrell McCullough doing this. They appeared in Life magazine. I don't think that the historical record suggests that McCullough had anything to do with the murder, but it is still very disturbing to see that this undercover police spy basically was so close to Dr. King that, he was the first guy on the scene when he was killed. Morrell McCullough also went on to work for the CIA, and in 1978, when the House of Representatives was reopening the investigation into Dr. King and JFK's assassinations, they pulled him into Congress and made him testify while he was a CIA agent, and he was really unhappy about it. So there's still a lot about his work as an undercover officer spying on the civil rights movement that we probably will never know about. But it's disturbing that in both his case and in the case of Gene Roberts, that these undercover police spies were literally on the scene, and even if they had nothing to do with the murder per se, just that they were so close to these men at the moment they were murdered. It says a lot about how deeply local police penetrated activist circles in the 60s.
Absolutely. Wow, that's one you can think on for quite a long time. Even the fact that I kept thinking in my brain, so was he working for the CIA in Memphis in 68? Or are we sure? He
doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like he was. If that's the case, then those records have totally been destroyed. But what we do know, what he was doing, was working as an undercover police officer for Memphis, but his supervisor on the Memphis police force, the guy we could call his handler, he was regularly meeting with an FBI agent. So there was, basically a man in between Morrell McCullough and the FBI. There was local espionage and intelligence going from Memphis police up to the FBI. And that was often the dynamic where it was these red squads, these undercover police units, that were the people actually doing the grunt work of surveillance. I mean, it's hard work, it's slow work, and they would often collect all the intelligence, provide it to white supervisors who, in some cases, would even provide it further to the FBI.
Wow. That is, wow. All right. That is stunning. I would be even remiss. He did mention 1978 in those hearings. That is when Jonestown happened in Guyana. Anyway, before we let you depart, are there any books on Mike Hannon? Like he said, did he write a biography, or are there any books on him to give more details?
I think mine is the only one. I mean, what's kind of amazing is that he's almost totally forgotten in that he was making national headlines when all this stuff was going on. He was, there were stories about him in newspapers all over the country. And then I think he remained kind of a known figure in L.A. for the rest of his life. But I don't think there's another book on him. One thing that, kind of to what you're talking about, later in life, he became, some guy he became an attorney, and sometimes he even defended police who had been credibly charged with police brutality against black defendants. So that's like later in life. But yeah, he had a long record as a progressive, and then, as someone who probably went more right-wing later in life and kind of resorted to some of his, white racist roots that he had grown up with, sadly.
That's what I said. I don't think it's the majority. I think it's all. That's what it means to be classified as white. That's what I mean. He's not. And that's why you said he's rare. No, he's not. No, I've heard all of this before. All of this. Even if they, for like 2 days, like, what? They did what to George Floyd? No. And then they go right back to doing like, I've heard all of that. I've heard all of that. The bot, I did get some great info from discussing your book with the bot. Our last question, bot generated, said you mentioned that many departments engaged in a willful campaign to destroy surveillance records. In your 8 years of research, how did you manage to piece together this history despite the state's, white people's, deliberate work to erase their own fingerprints? I thought that was a good one.
Well, yeah, police departments in L.A., New York, Houston, Chicago, they bragged about destroying hundreds of thousands, in some cases even millions, of surveillance records. But what happened in a few cases is activists sued those police departments and ended up winning court settlements in the 70s and 80s, where even, 5 or 10% of those records were saved from destruction. That happened in Chicago, and some of those records exist in Chicago. That happened in New York. New York has the biggest surveillance archive remaining, which fortunately these activists saved those files. The other thing that happened was local police, like I said, were often reporting their surveillance and their nefarious acts against the civil rights movement to the FBI. So even when the police department destroyed records of that surveillance, in some cases, the FBI had a record that ended up surviving. And so I did a lot of research in FBI files looking for stuff about local police departments. And that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but the FBI kept records on many different law enforcement collaborating agencies.
Fascinating. Glad I got that one from the bot. And even just what he said, sometimes that there were millions of records destroyed. Like, wow. That, even in fact, that underscore, you can call that a mic drop. When I said white people are not ignorant about racism, millions of records. Certainly that's not every single white person, but I mean, wow. What black organizations? Did you hear about SNCC or Bobby Seale, Dr. Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party, where they purged millions of records on white people that they studied? I don't think so. Like, I could be in error, but I don't think so. Any hoodles, I learned a ton. The book, and this was a switcheroo because we were not supposed to even be talking about this book, but man, I took lots of highlights and learned a lot reading. Police Against the Movement, the Sabotage of the Civil Rights Struggle and the Activists Who Fought Back. Our guest, Dr. Joshua Clark Davis. Thanks a ton for hanging out with us. We will have to do it again and go through some of the details that we didn't get to spend more time on. But thank you so much for hanging out with us for this here Wednesday evening.
Thank you, Gus. I really appreciate you having me on the show. This was a great discussion, and you dug into the book in a real meaningful way, and I appreciate that.
Oh, it was worthy of the even with the Seahawks triumph. It was worthy of the time and energy, especially since Seattle popped up in there, and I learned a lot. Mr. Hannon alone, my feats, I learned a ton. Great research, sir. Much obliged, Dr. Joshua Clark Davis. Enjoy the rest of your late Wednesday evening on the East Coast, sir. Evening.
Thank you, Gus. I appreciate it.
For sure. Take care, sir.
You too. Have a good night.
Yes, sir. You too. Context of White Supremacy. Again, our guest, Dr. Joshua Clark Davis, author of many books. And in fact, again, I can plug our Catherine Massey Book Club. Char Adams, lovely, intelligent journalist, black female. Her brand new book, also published in 2025, like the book we discussed today, Black-Owned, The Revolutionary Life of the Black Bookstore. She said herself that she was inspired by Dr. Clark's research, the report I talked about, the FBI's war on black bookstores, and that right there led to the book today. So I can't say enough, like, read nonfiction, try to study racism, white supremacy as a total system. Like, that is so lacking and important. Any hoodles, we'll take a quick break and then we'll be right back. Give update for tomorrow, rest of the programs for the week. Context of White Supremacy. We will be right back.
From the late 1960s, after the death of Martin Luther King and the riots and the upheavals and all like this, and black people with their fists in the air and all like that, and trying to stumble and fumble and find their way and get focus, the white supremacists made a blueprint and put it into action. And that is, I'm going to have these people so confused, they don't even know what they started out to do. And by the late 1970s, they had just about completed it. And we've been on that ever since. And you mentioned something very important. They are more comfortable than ever. But see, it's like making gorillas comfortable in a cage, or monkeys, or pandas. You still got them in a cage, but they're comfortable. See, so give him some bling bling. It's like giving an animal a brand new car and training the animal to ride up and down the street in it. And then you stand back and point at the animal. Like one white man said in the late 1950s. He said he doesn't care what kind of car a Negro has. He said he's still a nigger. And when he rides by in a shiny car, to him, it's just a monkey in a car. White people built a car, put a monkey in it, trained the monkey to drive the car, so now you're looking at a monkey in a car. See, but black people don't see themselves that way. But this is how the white supremacists see us, and they are the ones who run our business. And we have to know that when they look at us, that's what they see. That's what they see. That's what they see. And at a subliminal level, what they see begins to spill over into our brains so that we at a subliminal level see each other that way and indirectly see ourselves that way.
Context of White Supremacy. Wish we'd had Dr. Davis with us a tad, like maybe 15 minutes more. I had a few more questions, but I did get to, oh man, if I had looked down my list, I would have stolen like an extra 2 minutes. Like I've got fussed at sometimes, and our guests have gotten hostile with us, where they've been like, hey man, we got to go. You know, I've been here, you know, I don't even like talking to you, you know, you not that personable, and your guests are kind of lame too, or your callers are lame too, and I'm ready to go. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, I just got, what did you do? I'm ready to go. That's happened a number of times over our 17 years of broadcasting, and hey, I'm ignorant, I'm still learning. With Fuller, I'm still learning, I'm trying to, you know, but if I had looked down my list, I said, wait a minute, Dr. Davis, I know it's late out there. If I was on the East Coast, I'd be whining and complaining to you, like, man, it's almost 10 o'clock. But, you know, I got children and things to do, work in the morning. Like, he used the term tar in the book. I would have asked, what do you mean tar? That's one. I don't believe the word tar, T-A-R, is in the word guide, but I would say that is a term that should not be used, saying that you are trying to tar me as an insurrectionist. You know, you're trying to tar me as unpatriotic. That term should not be used. It suggests that you are trying to blacken me. It's the same thing I know Mr. Fuller has in the word God, tarnish. It's the same logic. That, and it's so antiquated and anachronistic, and I mean, they used to do that. You might be tarred and feathered literally. It is nigh on 2030. We're not tarring anyone. We're too lazy to even go out and tar the driveway or anything else. So nobody is being tarred. You can say that they verbally disparaged the person. You can say they'll criticize, but lots of different ways it can be said without, again, suggesting that anytime we vilify someone, we are darkening, blackening, sullying, tarnishing. I think even denigrate, I think even has connotations that somehow go back to black. I might be wrong on that one. I'd have to go get my etymology and see is that true, but I think it might be. But anyway, there are many ways that we can precisely articulate things without tar, unless you're doing the blacktop. Let's see. Oh, I was going to read the what show? I don't know. The Black Police Officers. That would be the correct title. They're Black Police, not spy. Well, I guess they are spies too, but the Black Police Officers. But I thought it was important what he said, that it is significant substantially that Minister Malcolm X and Dr. King each had police spies, black police officers, who had infiltrated, hanging out with them, gotten their most intimate circle, and were with them at the moment that they died. Whether they were involved in the assassination or not is, well, I can't say it's irrelevant. I can't say that, but even if they were not, we'll say it that way, even if they were not involved in any way, knowingly, unknowingly, if they had nothing to do with it at all, just the fact that they were so close that they were present, that this happened repeatedly. Who is more informed about racism, white supremacy? That's one. And that's, Fuller said, hey, the four-wallism is not going to work. And even frankly, I would say all that talk, and I've heard lots of it on my time on the plantation, victims of racism talking about so-called agents and all of that, the record shows we are terrible at picking out who are the agents. Even when we're not making false identifications, where we're saying that Leroy is an agent and it's actually Jamal and Tamika and Todd and Keisha, we over here talking about Leroy. We have lots of that. even if you do get Todd and Keisha, you still miss 2. That sort of thing. Like, we are not good. It's not, Mr. Fuller said that it's not going to be any secrets in the system of white supremacy racism. It's just not. If it's something that you do not want known, you should probably not share. Period. But it's not going to be anything, even less now with all the technology and everything else. So, I mean, hey, it's not going to be any secrets, and you're not going to be able to identify all these so-called agents. Not even close. But he had a number of passages talking about some of these black officers, and seemingly some of them feeling lament, remorse about this, ashamed maybe even about all of this, even pointing out that sometimes this was the only way black officers could get on the so-called police department. You got to go and spy on other black people. And they might even, the racists, they might even try and spin it in how they pitch it. Like, hey, we got these no-count niggers. They going to mess it up for all of the good black people. And, you want rest of you good black people be doing well. Get out here and get these radical niggers. You go and you keep an eye on them. You let us know what they doing. Make sure they not up to no good, and blah, 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 and that sort of thing. And I mean, hey, you going to make some money. They might give you an award. They might give you a bonus, which they did in some of these instances, and they could just lie and tell you that, the folks that you're going to spot, they're criminals, they're malcontents, they're up to no good. We already got the data, and just go and report. Okay. You go do that. And like I said, for some of them, how do you even know how you're going to be used and what you're going to be doing and all the rest of it? And then some of these folks said that they were threatened. Some of the black officers who went out to go spy and everything, they said, hey, you talk about this or do that, psh, you saw what happened to Minister Malcolm. Just saying. Not absolving. And I guess if there's one more, I was reminded of Fred Hampton, Black Panther Party, Chicago. Fred Hampton, Mark Clark, killed 1969. Chicago Police Department. Ed Hanrahan, white attorney, we talked about before, involved in that case as well. I was reminded of that case. There was a black person, William O'Neill, used by COINTELPRO, FBI, to go in and give them information, spy, basically. Same thing, even though William O'Neill was not a black police officer, although he did aspire, unless I've been misinformed, to be an enforcement officer. Anyway, Mr. O'Neill, he was like 20 years old, approximately, when he was recruited by the FBI to go be a spy. And I said, dang, like your brain computer is still developing? That's really young. Fred Hampton, he was about the same age when he was assassinated. That's really young. I think some of these Merrill McCullough and some of these other black people that he talks about in the book, they also were very young, like under the age of 25 when they went and started doing this work. So again, I'm not absolving, but just like, man, how informed do you think you were when you were 20 about the system of white supremacy? And then powerful white people come in, like I said, they might have a carrot offering. It might be goodies. We'll pay for you to go to school. We'll give you a job, a good job with benefit, a government job. And some of these black people, what I heard before, they said, hey, I went to join the police to be a part of counter-racism. I went to go and be a part of the police to help black people, and you call the police, it's not some white dude with a badge and a nigger knocker, it'll be me. And that's what they said. Like, they didn't join to go and spy on black people. Like, all of that. The person who is most to blame for even the black people spying on other black people, person most to blame, is classified as white. Now, one thing, I guess if I could go back, pick out something important from broadcast, Mike Hannon, that white dude for the LAPD, said not all white people, or he didn't even say that, grew up in a racially restricted region where he thought Negroes were lazy. The end. The black people live on the Negro side of town and they're lazy. That's why they don't have good houses and, good education and all the rest of it. He goes, and I guess he said something. I don't even know what the details about exactly what did he say that upset his white comrades, and they punished him by putting him in a police car with a Negro. And he even points that out in the book, that they had so-called segregated squad police cars. It would be all white officers in the car with white officers, and then the Negroes, they would go put them over in the ghetto and with all other Negro officers. They, to punish Mike Hannon, this is a good white man supposedly, they put him in a police car with Negro. And this changed his outlook. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe the Negro isn't lazy. Oh, man. Maybe we've been messing over them. And then he starts going to some of the meetings and all of that. Like, let me get more informed about this. Oh, wow, this is terrible. Man, they've been messing over black people. I never knew. Once he starts doing this, his white colleagues, they let him know. You are a traitor to the white race. What are you doing? You're not supposed to be hanging out with these Negroes. We are punishing you. Now you're going to be voluntarily hanging out with Negroes? Your feet's hurt? I cracked up laughing when I read, your feet's hurt? Who is ignorant about, even to say something like that? These are police officers. This is the LAPD. Rodney King. Mark Furman. I forgot, since Orenthal James was loosely mentioned in the book. That's what we're talking about. Your feet's hurt? Hanging out with your brothers and cousins? So they do all of that and kick him off the LAPD and send him all that, call him a rat, call him a Negro lover and all the rest of it. He goes off to be an attorney, which is a great job. That's, man, when Fuller say white people don't get fired, the white people say I'm a Negro lover and they kick me off the police department, I go to be an attorney. F. Lee Bailey, I go to be an attorney. Really, I got promoted, really, because that's a much better gig. He goes to be an attorney, and he ends up representing his old homies at the police department. And it sounded like he said representing them in police brutality cases where they've nigger knocked a black person. Rodney King? Come on. I thought not all white peoples is racist, even though he said, and even that's why I'm saying, like, the logic is so strained and threadbare. Like, you got to have really confused black. Matter of fact, I had that written down. I had it written down. That's one I'll give that I neglected to share while he was here. It's boop, boop, boop. Here we go. This is on almost got it perfectly. Matter of fact, this is at the very beginning of the chapter 8, Traitor, about the white, not all white peoples is racist. So the LAPD chief of police, Willie Parker, I'm just going to read it, did not hold back, asked whether the civil rights movement was reasonable for that summer's uprisings, was responsible for that summer's uprisings. Parker decried civil rights activists and who manipulated black people. Parker did not hold back. Asked whether the civil rights movement was responsible for that summer's uprisings. Parker decried civil rights activists who manipulated black people, dupes who were easily fooled because they account for a fair proportion of the 9 million functional illiterates in the United States. I had to highlight that one, especially how we got to this book, Black-Owned, Char Adams' work. Mr. Parker, Chief Parker, are you saying that people are more easily misinformed, more easily deceived if they don't read? That is fascinating, because he said this like 60 years ago. They just said that exactly and almost verbatim on First Post, which is an Indian news outlet, compensatory call-in. I just played it. They literally, and I mean like 2026 just said, hey, it is a national security threat around the world. If you don't read, you are much easier to deceive. Hey, put that on a shirt, boy. If you don't read, much easier to deceive. Thank you. But that's the chief of police. So are you saying that black people, because we don't read, it's easier to trick us? Commies and reds can come in and just tell us anything, and we just go out and we just do it. That's what they told us. Wow. That's even more. Reading is more important than watching television. But I say that I'm of the opinion, if black people read more nonfiction, we don't need no Hate U Give. We don't need no Iceberg Slim. We don't need no Waiting to Exhale. We need nonfiction. If we read more nonfiction, even a book like this, written by a white person, I think, man, it would start to be a little bit more of a strain. Are you serious? Not all white people is racist? Are you serious? Dr. Welsing again, it's not that many white people on the planet. Less than 10% of the population. So it's not that many of them. Okay. He didn't say like half of the white people are racist. He didn't say a third. He didn't say a minority. He said most white people, the majority, they don't care about black people. I said, He said Mike Hannon is rare. This isn't even a white dude that said, I love me some black people. I hang out with black people. I invest in black people. This is a white man who grew up in a racially restricted region, probably had a sign or a horn, no negras, and said he thought black people are lazy. How is that rare? How is that an anomaly? That is every day, all over the world common. That is as common as hearing Negra. Common as a black person getting shot. Common as a joke about a black dude not having a job. Rare. Mike Hannon is rare. And then after he did the Woodstock thing, because really that's all that is. You had a whole lot of that. White people for like 5 minutes pretend, oh my Lord, I can't believe what they did to Dr. King. Or, oh man, I'm going to go out here and march with Dr. King. Or, oh my God, they even got that in the book. White police departments from all over the continent, some of them even sent units to the march on Washington. Or they went and followed everybody. That's why I said, like, you didn't have to be an activist. You didn't have to go out and, I'm going to join the Black Panther Party. I'm going to join SNCC. I'm going to go out and see if I can do a freedom ride. You don't have to do none of that. It could just be, I'm nosy. I just want to go to the march to hear what they talking about. Oh, we got an upstart nigger. Write this name. Leroy lives in apartment 1206 Lenox Avenue. Boom, boom. Write that down. You could be in New York. I'm going to go to the march on Washington. We're going to write all your information down, put you on file. You might be one of them dangerous niggers. And they said this was all across the continent. I had never heard that. They got, if you're in Nebraska, if you're in L.A., if you're in Georgia, and you say, I'm going to go up to D.C. to go to the March on Washington, get a folder for that nigga. Write that down. Put him in the local police department. Even got local police officers who are not even in that jurisdiction. We're going to be up at the march. Now, even you think about all that. This is 60 years ago. Why didn't they have all of that in place for January 6th, man? They knew white people. You done stole the election and we mad and Trump's supposed to be in that. Why, man, they should have been taken up. Plus, they had been acting a fool at the local level leading up to January 6th in 2020. They should have had all kinds of police departments. If what Dr. Davis told us is true, if they still got that clearinghouse set up on the West Coast in California, they should have had all kinds of information and data about all of these white insurrectionists, Enrique Tarrio, and even my brother Mr. Cole, who's still waiting for a pardon for those pipe bombs. They should have had all kinds of dossiers on them, like, uh-oh, these folks fitting to cut a fool. Y'all need to keep an eye on this. Did that happen? Come on, man. Come on. If it had been me, Al Sharpton, Leroy, Flavor Flav, Johnny Cochran's nephews, cousins, they would have had all kinds of intelligence, man. And what does it, and I even have to pause to go back to Mike Hannon, because our guest, Dr. Davis, he knew how the Mike Hannon story ends. That's not included in the book, that Mike Hannon went off to practice law and defend police officers who were accused of nigger knocking Jamal and Leroy. That's not in the book. The part about him getting fired from the police department, he goes on to be a lawyer, that's in there. But what type of law, the type of cases, that's not in the book. He knew more information than Gus T. Duh. Why is there contest to, hey, not all white peoples is racist. You know Mike Hannon is rare. No, he's not. And you know better than I do. No, he's not. This is a typical white dude. He is not. There's nothing special about him. There's nothing unique about him. This story, in a unique way, your feet hurt, Mike Hannon. Yes, it does reveal a lot about white supremacy, racism, but the most important things, duh, white people are not ignorant about racism. And even, it needs to be said correctly, Fuller said white people cannot be ignorant about racism. It's important to say it that way, because that's not even allowed. That's against the rules to have a white person. You are classified as white and you don't know what's expected of you to maintain control of niggers. Say it again. It's not even that many white people on the planet. All hands on deck. What do you mean? You don't know what's expected of you as a white person. And if that is true, we finna learn you quickly. That ain't gonna be, you ain't gonna have that as an excuse long, because we finna tell you right now. It ain't gonna be one or two. We are gonna catch you up right now. And Mike Hannon got it. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna go be a lawyer where I can make some money. In fact, he could have taken his lawyer skills. I'm gonna go help black people that they messed over. I'm gonna go help my comrades who messed over me and know I can get my good retainer. If they had or if it does exist, a biography on Mike Hannon, white dude with the LAPD, if he wrote a memoir and it didn't get published, anything like that, I would love to read it at the Catherine Massey Book Club. Especially if he got like some of the racist notes that were sent to him. Like, come on. Even I think that's significant, the number of times that he was called a rat in the letters that he reprinted in the book, Dr. Davis. Hey, it's no snitching. Why do you all keep calling him a rat? Is he revealing truth about what it means to be classified as white? Y'all going and call him a traitor. Say he should be, because the white woman that wrote it said he ought to be convicted for treason and have his children taken from him. That's, again, you cannot be ignorant about racism. That's serious too. Like, woo. And it's not like he was denouncing the country or calling people names or anything. He wasn't committing any crime. And in fact, even the hypocrisy of it all, he's going to these meetings. They got black police officers that they paid to go to the meetings and spy and take notes. What's the problem? The hypocrisy of it all. Anyway, and we got through with Mike Hannon, he didn't even come back with, hey, Gus T., don't be out here trying to give folks the impression that not all white people, or trying to give folks the impression that all white people is racist. Maybe Mike Hannon is not the best. What about Thad? Ain't no other examples of a non-racist white person in the book. Now you can say, well, what about some of these folks on the Freedom Ride? What about Mark Lane from Jonestown? You got some of the other white people that say they were at the March on Washington, or, you know, they supported SNCC. They do talk about SNCC purging white members. But it would be a real strain to read this book and find who are the white people that are not. I guess you could say maybe the white people who stole those material, the COINTELPRO material in Pennsylvania. But I mean, it would be hard. It would be hard to pick out the white people that said these are the white people that are not racist, and this is the evidence. It would be really. Mike Hannon is about as good as it gets, and he was in a racially restricted, probably was born and raised in a racially restricted region, and then went back and did his later life and retired in a racially restricted region with his police homies. Mark Furman. That same police department. Mark Furman, I can forget. LAPD. It's the same police department. Mark Furman. He might have defended Mark Furman. Anyway. Woo. Reading is more important than watching television. Let's see. The Leonard Deadwyler was mentioned in the book. We talked about him before. In fact, Jeffrey Toobin mentions him in Run of His Life when talking about O.J. Simpson. And I just shout out to Johnny Cochran. Johnny Cochran, that was one of his first case, might have been his first case. And he did not win, if I remember. Mr. Deadwyler, privileged black male, was trying to get his pregnant black wife to the hospital. And he was shot and killed by police who thought he was out raping white women or looting or both. But that was one of his, Johnny Cochran's first cases. I even thought Johnny Cochran could have got a shout out in this book because the Deadwyler case was mentioned, and that's him. And then two, because of all of this about the local police departments and his work on, I guess you could put O.J. Simpson in there too, Mark Furman, but rewinding with his work on the Geronimo Pratt case for the Black Panther Party. And there was the police informant, Matthew Cotton, who was so critical in that case for so many years, being one of the lead witnesses who was responsible for Geronimo Pratt being in greater confinement for close to 30 years. I thought, man, Johnny Cochran could have come in here, could have been mentioned in the text in a number of different ways. Any hoodles, all of that said, I am reminded, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, the ISIS papers at the very beginning of the text, she said, even before she gets to her recommendation about Neely Fuller Jr. and the importance of reading the ISIS paper or the compensatory code book, she says, non-white people, you are not qualified to discuss the system of white supremacy if you have not read Dr. Kenneth O'Reilly's Racial Matters. He's been a guest on this program 3 times, twice to talk about that book specifically. But she talks about the conspiratorial nature of the system of white supremacy that is revealed in that book. I would say this is one and the same. And making sure, if you are going to accurately discuss white supremacy, racism, and even what it means to be white, there should be lots of material like this in your library that you do research on, that you look for material. The Houston area is well represented in this book. He said he went to Texas to get information. Like, this is a sort of book that you should read, encourage your children to read. We talk about a total system. That's what you see in this book. It touches on economics. Like I said, black entrepreneurs try to open bookstores and such. target number one. And we're going to get your customers too. What you read, how often you hang out here. And they even said, go pressure the customers. Same thing I said about the black police officers. Go tell the customers. This was like verbatim. He said, hey, go get them and say, hey, what they selling in the bookstore? You think they up to no good? They're trying to get people in there to do some bombs. They got the anarchist cookbook in there. Keep tabs on them for us. Just come back and report. They got meetings. You see anybody in there? That Gusty Renegade, he trying to say he's going to come in there and do a broadcast. Just let us know. Come back and keep tabs on it, and we'll make it worth your while. We'll hook you up, give you Starbucks gift cards or whatever. Come on. Who is more informed about white supremacy, racism? And when he said you got police departments where they had millions of files that were burned, purged, deleted, and have that happen all across the continent, I have not heard the Black Panther Party, SNCC, any other New African Republic, any other organization of black people where, oh my goodness, they just had millions of files, records, the destruction part, and or even really all the files. I've asked bunches of folks like, man, did you see where, this black organization, they commissioned a study to go and get this research done and get that done? Set up an institute to train canines to bite white people. Have you heard anything like that? Nope. We heard that about white people even today. Set up an institute to train dogs to chomp on black people and invite white people from all over the world. Like, if that institute still exists where you can train the dogs, I would love. What is the history? Do you all have books like where you can see, like in your high school, they will have pictures of the graduating class. Sometimes they'll put them on a hall so you can just walk and kind of see through the generations as you walk by. If they have that sort of thing at the dog training facility in Baltimore, how many Negroes do you think from anywhere in the known universe came to this Baltimore facility to train, or even just to pick up techniques? Not even saying they got to bring their canine from Madagascar or wherever, but I'm going to just come in and, learn techniques, and then I go back and we'll handle the rest of it. We'll train our dogs and we'll get on it. I'm a bet you talk about racially restricted region. I'm a bet you that they probably do not have nary a dark face anywhere in any of the class. You could start from whenever that place was established, 1960. If they still exist now, I would be totally willing to bet it might be not nary a black face anywhere in there. But I would love to take a tour, and then if they got like yearbooks, history book, anything like that, let's see it. Any hoodles. Let's see. Important point. Some of this will come back up as we continue reading Char Adams' Black-Owned, The Revolutionary Life of the Black Bookstore. I think we'll be about halfway through that book this Friday, so if you have not been reading along with us, wow, it has been absolutely amazing. I've learned so much, and we really haven't even gotten to like the more current, part of all this, because it's going to catch to the pandemic and George Floyd. It'll get to all that later, so lots more to come. I have enjoyed it thoroughly. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on Friday. I will get in one snippet from the book that we were supposed to talk about, so I'm totally glad we did the switcheroo. COINTELPRO is a subject near and dear to my heart for many reasons, so I'm always glad to get new books about COINTELPRO and different aspects of suppression. All of that's such a direct aspect of white supremacy, racism, remind me what we're up against. But his other book, Dr. Davis, From Head Shops to Whole Foods, The Rise and Fall of Activist Entrepreneurs, that book has a whole chapter on black bookstores. COINTELPRO pops up there. Again, Dr. Davis, he wrote that article, much shorter, the FBI's war on black bookstores. I thought this one paragraph was important. If he had had more time, I would have asked him about this too. Dr. Davis writes, Black bookstores received a major boost not only from revived interest in black nationalism, but also from the emergence of black-authored romance novels and best-selling love stories with female protagonists. Although these books were not apolitical, they had few direct connections to black radical movements. Got a double negative there. Not coincidentally, many of the new generation of black booksellers were far less engaged in political activism than their predecessors and favored racial pluralism over black nationalism. I don't know what racial pluralism means. Most black booksellers decided they could not survive if they focused solely on texts by black activists without championing the ever-growing body of popular black fiction. That F word. Now, I said, and that's one thing I can say I learned from Char Adams. Oh man, I did not know white people don't have a problem with black people reading fiction. You want to be goofy? You want to get you some Iceberg Slim? Even though we didn't read Ernest Tideman. You want to read Shaft? You want to read about how Leroy ain't nothing, no good, feverish, chasing all the white women? You can read that all day long. Hate You Give? You can read that all day long. ISIS Papers. What book even said it? Was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? That book that we kept saying, dang, why does this book cost $400? Oh. Reading about racism, nonfiction, is more important than watching television. I thought this was important because we just read this in Char Adams last week, where she said the same thing almost verbatim, but she went into specific titles and saying, oh man, as we moved away from the 60s and 70s to the 80s, it was Color Purple, Intozaki Shange for colored girls who considered suicide, When the Rainbow Was Enough, Waiting to Exhale, Disappearing Act. That's what it was, a barrage of black female fiction writers. A barrage of them, where I even noted, dang, were there no black male writers who caught on in this? She didn't list any. And you get a big dose of black misandry in the midst of all of that. That ain't no coincidence either. Just like Gene Roberts, Merrill McCullough, two police spies being present for the assassination of Dr. King and Minister Malcolm X, that ain't no coincidence, really. Just like Jonestown happening in the middle of those House Select Committee on Assassination hearings, where you had Mark Lane and others, they fixing to testify about some of all of this. No, it ain't no coincidence, and now we got to go to Guyana because 900 people been killed, most of them black. That ain't no coincidence either. And call it revolutionary suicide, Dr. Newton. That ain't no coincidence either. Anyway, reading more important than watching television. We'll resume with Black-Owned on Friday. Cannot wait. Cannot wait. Any hoodles. Let's see. *61. If folks have a thought to share what they heard from Dr. Davis. I will say on the sly, even though this book was just published in 2025, it is January 2026, so I mean, it hasn't been out that long. Same thing I said about Black-Owned, Char Adams' book. But, man, like, we do not have folks who read and, like, let me know about new books pretty much at all. They will, nonsense that they find on YouTube that I don't care about at all. They will send that forever after I've said for years, please don't send me the nonsense you found on YouTube. I don't care what you watched on YouTube. I'm offended when you send me things that you watched on YouTube because I just don't care. Netflix, YouTube, all of it. I don't care what you watch on your screens. Books, on the other hand, that would be different, provided they're not suggestions for the Catherine Massey Book Club. I got that. But I mean, we don't read at all. And because we don't read, we don't realize the volume of books that come out about racism because it ain't nothing else to talk about. That dominates. Even now with CRISPR and AI and chatbots and everything else, don't nothing dominate like racism. Even, matter of fact, we haven't even had a full month of 2026. There are already books that have been published this year. Oh, look at that, look at that, look at that. Reading is more important than watching television. But I was like, man, what? We don't have listeners. Oh man, Gus T, did you see this new book? In the local police departments, they even got this pretend white man who's not racist. He's talking about your feet's hurt, even just for that alone to get the part where he said, Mr. Mike Hannon in the LAP, just for that alone, like, man, did you read this? And then the rest of it's important too, but did you read this? Like, oh my goodness. Char Adams' book too, like, man, did you read this? Reading, bookstores, COINTELPRO, that alone would have gotten me. COINTELPRO's attack on bookstores, like, what? What? I didn't know that at all. The part about the dogs, the programs that we've done. Carolyn Wazelchuk, white woman, was with us just 2 years back talking about the hounds of white supremacy. We've had multiple programs talking about that, but man, I did not even know. Like, that would be field trip if I ever get to Baltimore again. Where is this institute at, man? All over the and how many white people came from Africa to train their dogs to chomp on black? Can I training day? I even played that clip. Denzel Washington, he said, man, training the dog to hate niggers. They've been doing that in Baltimore for 60 years. Put that on Freddie Gray. Act like I forgot that from 2015. Let's see, folks who dialed in with a hand up. Let's see. Retired firefighter in Florida. Did you have commentary?
Yes, sir. Greetings, everyone. I think, based on what I was hearing, the book is pretty interesting to purchase and read. You know, the organized form of law enforcement from its inception was designed to mistreat non-white people who race classified as black. So that's always an interesting subject to learn more about. As I was listening to the program, of course, there was some talk on the King assassination and the assassination of Malcolm X. With the King assassination, I can recall, being that I'm a former firefighter, that there were a lot of law enforcement officers in a fire station in short distance from the location where Reverend King was murdered. That's why when it did happen, that they were on the scene very quickly. During the talk, I can remember hearing about the black law enforcement officer that was actually in a lot of the historical pictures over Dr. King, who was, by that time he suffered that mortal wound that he eventually died of. So, law enforcement, the assumption is that they knew that he was going to attempt was going to be on his life. That's what it tells me. Matter of fact, there were two black male firefighters at that station that was temporarily transferred before that day took place, a day before. No, don't show up at the fire station, go to this fire station, which gives a lot of accuracy on when it was going to be an attempt on his life. With Malcolm X, a similar situation. I was listening to the conversation between yourself and the guest about the black male who was giving Minister Malcolm mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Therefore, CPR wasn't that good during that time. But anyway, he was also a part of I don't know if it's COINTELPRO or not, but it was somewhat of a, because I read a book on him. It was somewhat of a clandestine type of law enforcement unit that he was a part of. And that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening, and I'm always interested in those type of interviews, and that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Gene Roberts, much obliged, retired firefighter. Gene Roberts, the black male who gave mouth-to-mouth to Minister Malcolm after he was assassinated. That's what Dr. Davis, his book is about. He talks about that, and it might have even been multiple black New York Police Department officers who were part of this secret surveillance unit that was spying on Minister Malcolm right up to the moment that he was killed. May have been more than one, not just Eugene Roberts. And even beyond that, they had multiple black officers, some of them spying on Minister Malcolm X, and then other black people in organizations. Like, it is fascinating to get more details into white people are not ignorant about racism, and then the way that they're able to manipulate black people at a time where they didn't even have very many black police officers to begin with, and they would go out and recruit and get them to spy on black people. What does it mean to be white? Fascinating. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in, if they have commentary to share. I was going to get one of the passages where he talks about the black, I don't know why I'm being resistant to say spies. They would still be victims, but I guess, that's what they're paid to do, spy on the black people. So the black spies and them being used in this manner. Some of these black people did seem to express remorse about all of this. As I said, some of these black people did seem to express confusion, let's say, about all this, that they didn't grasp that this is how they were going to be used for the police department, which is very standard. Fuller talked about that too. I mean, we since we are victims of racism, we are so confused about everything. It is very, very easy to manipulate people who are confused and childlike, and that is all of us if we are classified as not white. Gusty at the top of that list. But that's trying to read so we can be a little bit more informed, so we can make better choices and really just have a better understanding of what it means to be classified as white, what racism, white supremacy is, and then hopefully we can make some better decisions about how to go about solving this problem. Let's see. Our caller at 7189. Did you have a question? Get in commentary from what you heard from Dr. Davis, 7189.
Yeah, I enjoyed his discussion of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, the issue with the black infiltrators. I've noticed that, like with Dot Hart Perry with FBI, and was it William O'Neill with Fred Hampton, and even with Mark. I mean, it's just always an infiltrator there with the big names of people. Whenever it seemed like black people are working together, so I thought that was interesting. I noticed his reluctance to want to say that all whites are racist, but it's kind of funny because. Now, I wanted to talk about this Friday, but I just want to notice, the way he writes. I find that so often when I read so many books, how even when you get a black author, they won't just say all whites are racist, and let's establish that as a premise and see if we can prove that point. Instead, they'll try to make exceptions, or they'll try to excuse it, or try to blame shift, or they'll try to minimize it. And I find that so interesting. Looking at so many books over the decades, seeing that same pattern over and over and over again. And then, like in this case, well, this white cop, he was right along with a black cop, and then he changed his mind, and that's supposed to be a good thing. Why was his mind even made up in the first place? He said he grew up and thinking black people are bad. Well, I mean, that's no recommendation that he's of a original mind. I mean, he has to see it for himself before he finally realizes, hey, let me give these people a shot that I've never met before. No, I'm going to automatically assume the worst about a group of people I don't have any contact with, and then he goes right back and reverts to his mean and goes and becomes a lawyer, part of the very system that. So I thought that was interesting, but the fact that I make the observation that I see so many times that when whites just show that, well, I shouldn't say show, but they're not outrageously hostile or offensive to black people, that there'll be an element of black people say, oh, well, see, they're not all racist because they're not treating me like trash. I'm like, wow, okay, that's awfully low standard. So I thought it was interesting hearing him discuss that. The only other thing I wanted to say was, you said you didn't mention, people don't talk about good books. And in 2025, I read two excellent books that came out in 2025, both by black women, both about Detroit, which is where I'm from. One was called The Containment. Another one was called Plundered. And, see, that's the kind of scholarship that, I mean, in Detroit, I haven't seen black people produce that level of scholarship ever before. I mean, that's something new. And so that's telling me that the environment exists for that kind of scholarship to be produced. And so I'm wondering, the reason why you don't see that level of scholarship in the past is because black people didn't have the resources or the opportunity or the stability to produce that kind of scholarship. But those are two excellent books, and that's all I wanted to say.
Much obliged. Reading more important than watching television. I actually got that book not that long ago, Plundered: How Racist Policies Undermine Black Home Ownership in America. Bernadette Atune, I'm messing her name up. Atune, black people are very confused about white supremacy racism. Non-white people in total are very confused about white supremacy racism, so that obviously is going to there'll be deficiencies in our scholarship based on our confusion. That said, I think there's a lot of great scholarship on the system of white supremacy, not just new. I mean, Neely Fuller Jr. Code book, that's at this point, what, 40 years old? That's in the time period you were talking about. That's 1984 or something thinking. Medical Apartheid, that's almost 20 years old at this point. That's one of the best books that I've ever read. I think that's well researched. It's thorough. It's comprehensive. That covers like 200 years of time. I think that's amazing. Yurugu, at this point, that's Dr. Marimba Ani. That's 30 years old at this point. Same thing. I think that is amazing. Scott, like, woof, that book is like 600 pages, well referenced, footnotes out the yin yang. Like, I think there's a ton of really thorough, constructive black scholarship that covers a wide array of time period. You could just go back to that time period that you were not informed about, 1970 through 1985. There's a massive amount of very high quality scholarship on the system of white supremacy there as well. I would only say, black people, we do not read, so we are not aware of many of the books that have been written about racism, white supremacy, new or old, and because of that, like, yeah, we are very, very pitiful, and white people have been very successful at getting us so that we do not read, and so that we don't have a culture of read. Like I said, I've hosted a book club for more than a decade, and we've had authors on from all over the world for almost 2 decades, and people really do not share books with me like, oh man, there's a new book that came out about racism. I remember, for the most part, no, not really. Every now and TV, yes. YouTube, yes. Even when I've said I'm not interested in any of that crap, I'd prefer if you not share any of that with me. Please do not. Oh no, I got you. We've been watching TV all day. You got to watch this too. Books. Anyway, the other quick thing that I'll say in terms of all white people being racist, I mean, I'm not aware of any. I mean, if you called me on and said, hey, get a book that posits that all white people are racist, it would be a challenge, especially just period. Any books, white people, non-white people, it would be a real challenge. And even if you said forget book, even if you just said get a person, get some other people other than you, Gusty, who influenced this. Are there scholars who, said that they came to this conclusion, and based on what evidence and what theory? I wouldn't even know where to start. No one takes that opinion. They, in general, and I would say in terms of books, white people dominate the publishing industry. So for a long time, I'm not sure you could even get published saying something like that. You'd probably have to go through all kinds of twisted logic to, now not all white people is racist. Even Fuller, not all white, you would probably have to say that to get, and we picked that out in the book club. It's black authors from all over the world. Andre Bloom, in her book, she's talking about what's going on in the Congo with Patrice Lumumba, and said the exact same thing. Not all white people are racist. Is that required? If you're a non-white person and you're going to publish, talk about race, especially if you're going to write a book about race, you're going to now, I don't say all white people now. I do not believe that. And like I said, the evidence isn't even there. Like, man, just pay attention. Who are you talking about? And in fact, I'm going to say something about this on the compensatory call-in, but it took a listener writing me some nonsense where they included the 3 racial classifications of Mr. Fuller to then butcher them and add in a whole lot of nonsense. It took me seeing that to process, like, oh man, That is just another way of saying not all white people are racist. If you're going to say there's 3 racial classifications, white supremacist, white, not white, that's just, yeah, not all white people is another way of saying not all white people is racist. I do not agree. And that right there sets us up for so much confusion. And that's another, you can put that right up there. White people are ignorant about racism. These are some of the greatest lies on the planet, and you have almost like 99% agreement amongst non-white people. These are like debilitating lies. These are things that are keeping us from solving this problem like massively. White people being ignorant about racism, and you even heard our guest today being resistant about that one to some degree. Get out of here. That's not the problem at all. Mike Hannon is not ignorant about racism, not even close. That's not the issue. White people endorse and they do not feel bad about black people being victims of racism. They support the system. That's what we got. The not all white people is racist, that lie, oh my God. I mean, it sets you up looking for Mike Hannons, when ain't none even there. Sets you up even really for Joshua Clark Davis, really, that because he did all this, he is not racist. He said he was white. I was going to ask him, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a racially restricted region as well? I know Baltimore doesn't count for all that, but I don't know if you born and raised in the Baltimore region. But that notwithstanding, I'm not even sure. You would have to have that idea. Start doing some serious study of white people with that question in mind. What does it mean to be white? And then even consciously, I'm going to look and see if I can find some white people that would really qualify. These are white people that are not racist. And I'm going to study not just one snapshot, not just what they did on this one day. I'm going to really look, see if I can find as much material about their life and times and what they did later on in life, how they spent their money, all of that. Do you find any white people that, yeah, I think this white person, they would qualify as not racist, They didn't harm no black people. They didn't live in no sundown towns. And they spent money and did everything that they could to fight against race. It would be like a lot, I'd have to go into all of this. But, yeah, have you find such a person? You go back and read and hear about that? Who are you talking about? As someone who has facilitated the book club nearly 15 years, we have not read one that I can point to that, boop, white person, not racist. Not one. Book we read today, like I said, who would be the white person that was not racist in the book we read today or talked about today? Police Against the Movement. Who? Once we move Mike Hannon aside, who? I couldn't even get name number one. Like I said, you'd have to go and get some of the white people from the Freedom Ride and say maybe some of them. But I mean, hey, that we starting to get into Bill Ayers territory now. Like Students for Democratic Society and the white people that go and putting bombs. The white people that decide they're gonna go in for real, put bombs. We start getting over there, and I already let you know how I feel about Bill Ayers and the rest of them. So. Anyway, and some of them, exactly what I said with Mike Hannon, some of them too, born and raised in racially restricted regions. So, anywhoos, yeah, that you can go back and listen to that again. I thought that section with Mike Hannon was super important, and even the way that what he labeled the chapter, traitor, when he really wasn't. And the way that the white people talked to him, they said, you should be convicted of treason. What did he do? It's not like he sent Dr. King a check for $50,000, $100. It's not like he adopted black children. He went to a meeting. He was still working for the police department. He went to a meeting and talked about racism. You are a traitor. And they said, your children should be taken from you, and called him a Negro lover. What does it mean to, and they fired him from the police department. What does it mean to be classified as white? Like, you cannot be ignorant. The expectations are right. You can be guaranteed there are penalties if you are classified as white and you are not doing what you're supposed to. There are penalties. We do not need to adopt that as non-white people. Make sure I get that in before we sign out. I've heard many victims of racism who said that we need to adopt a similar code. That way we can punish and keep it there. We do not. White people have a gangster operation, so they would have a code like that in place, that you're going to get down or we're going to treat you like the nigger, that type of a thing. They would do something like that. That is not what we are trying to emulate. We are trying to produce justice. So no, we do not need to have a system where, retired firefighter, you're going to do right or else we're going to camp out and kill your car. We do not need none of that. None of that. None. And in fact, that's talked about in the book too. You get all of these black people, which is easy to do. White people use all these black people as spies and infiltrators and all the rest of it, and then the black response is, well, we'll just go and kill some of the spies, which, apparently there was some of that, not just here, other parts of the world. That doesn't solve the problem at all, not even like total F. You've already seen that. Then, hey, now racist, now we got lots of excuses to come and mistreat all of you because you killed somebody. We can't have killing, we got laws. That sort of thing. And we were supposed to be replacing white supremacy with justice, not killing Negro snitches. That's not that's not solving the problem at all. And what I just said, you don't even get them all. You didn't kill Leroy. What about Eugene Roberts? What about Merrill McCullough, who they said, man, I say that again. They said Merrill McCullough, he worked for the CIA after he was present literally for the assassination of Dr. King. You could take that at least two ways, probably many more. So are we sure he didn't work for the CIA before the assassination? Are we sure this wasn't a part of his job, working for the CIA? The day King was assassinated, that wasn't a part of his assignment, CIA? Then, was this his reward for what happened while he was with Dr. King the day of the assassination? He did his job so well he got promoted to the CIA? Wouldn't that be a failure? I'm a police officer and I'm given an assignment to Dr. King's detail and he gets assassinated on my watch? Isn't that what they call a blemish on my record? How is that something that I know I'm going to get this CIA gig now? They done shot up old Dr. King while I was right there. I was the first person there, man. I was the first person there. Anyway, it is way easy. And we are not very good at picking out all of the agents. So, no, we don't need to have no policy like that. Plus, we make too many errors. Not only do we not pick every Eugene Roberts, we don't get every Merrill McCullough, every Ray Wood, we don't get them all, and we make the other mistakes where I think old retired firefighter is an agent too, and then whoops, not an agent. Well, we done chopped his ears off now. We don't need none of that policy from the race soldier. They are about mistreating people. All we need to be about is replacing white supremacy with justice and figuring out the most efficient code for doing so. And again, I think two of the major lies, because they're just not true, and it's difficult to solve problems if you have major like 99, I don't even know non-white. Like if you asked me, who are the non-white people other than you, Gus T, who agree with you? They think all white people are racist. Who? I'd be scratching my head for a minute I don't know. Not that I need to agree with any of you all, and frankly, I'm going to point that out. When you all incorrectly say that there are programs like the cows, you are wrong. I'm going to give you two quick. You are completely wrong, and now I'm starting calling that out aggressively. What are the other programs where you hear a black person read a book and talk to a white author and say, no, sir, I think all white people are racist? I'll quit today. Can you, any of you all, I'll quit today. I'll quit today. I don't even enjoy talking to you all this much. I'll quit today. What are the other programs where you hear a black host talk to a white author? I do think all white people are racist, and I'm going to use your book, and we're going to have a discussion about this. What? I'll quit today. I'll quit today. Retired firefighter. Is there another program? I'll quit today, because they might do it better. They don't even need me here to do all this. What program is that? Are you aware?
No, sir. That's why I've been listening to your program probably since its beginning. Because of the uniqueness.
I might be talking full talk, but man, I will quit today. I might give you all this like forever. You can retire Gus T. Where is that? And it can't be like a one-off. They did a program in 1976 where this popped up. Like, we do this all the time. We've been doing this for 17 years, and you lanes keep saying programs like this. What? Let's call it. What program? That's one. And then even the other one I could stop on would be, now exactly what program do they apply counter-racist techniques where they talk to white people? We got the no talk. I'm not interested in talking to you all and grousing and complaining, line up all the non-white people. Not all white peoples is racist, and we got to say that because Fuller said so. I don't care. I don't care. I'm going to talk to white people and get them in it. You didn't hear him doing all that nonsense. Yes, it is, and not always. You didn't hear that. He didn't even really have a good argument other than to say, well, the majority of white people are racist. Most non-white people I know don't even say that. Beat it, man. What is the program? Victim of New Jersey, you weren't with us. Are you aware of a program where a black person talks to white authors about a book and they discuss, are all white people racist? Do you know of a program where this happens?
That's not one.
Come on, y'all, stop lying.
Not even the great Tony Brown. I never even heard him say it.
Stop lying, y'all. Stop lying. That might even be one is so false and disrespectful of the work. That might be a retraction. Like, that's when I got the receipts, because some of you are emailing, you persistent about it. You should be able to at least name, because I've been saying this for a while now. I'm going to say it more aggressively, like full stop. I don't care what you talking about for nothing else. If there's programs like this, retire Gus. What's the program where a black person talks to a white person? No, sir. No, ma'am. I think all white people are racist. And all the rest of it. What is that program about? Where is it so we can go listen, because they might be doing it better, and I can retire blissfully and go listen to the people who do it correctly. Till then, y'all are lying.
Gus T, I would say since I can count 20 years of victims looking for white allies. So, yeah, I mean, you one and done.
I got my binoculars. I got my spyglass. I'm looking. Magnifying glass. White allies. I'm looking. I have not located, and we talk to white people all the time. I could have went to the Seahawks game and rolled around in the street at 12. Woo! No. Come on. And even the other part of this is if, bizarro world for a moment, if it is true that, hey, all white people are racist, wow, that is pitiful. If Gus T is like the only person, whoa, what Fuller said, Worthy of great pity. That is one to think on that. That is true. If it's wrong and that's not true, and you got some cool white people, I just haven't met them, they don't kick it with me, they don't live in Seattle, they're Patriots fans, whatever. Maybe it's Tom Brady, whatever. If that's fine, no problem. If all white peoples is racist, and we are insistent on not all white people is racist, I don't care who said it, we are insistent on saying that if it's not true, man, we are indeed worthy of great pity. Massive pity, as much as can be mustered. Woo. Anyway, I will underline that again, though. You can go back and just hear, man, I don't have to jump up and down and be calling cracker and all. That's the other thing, too. I don't even count that, like, people that are, like, got a name called white people, and I hate whitey and cracker. That doesn't even count. I'm talking about people, I'm just looking at the evidence. Let's be scientific. We're trying to solve a problem. What does it mean to be classified as white? I can name one Dr. Cambon, that'd be one. Dr. Cambon, that'd be one. I could get one person on my list. And it took me a while. One person, yes, I would co-sign on that. That's what it means to be white. And boom, no, ain't no white allies and cool white people. And what are we even talking about? Dr. Kamal Cambon, that's it.
Gus, I just seen on Twitter that you suspect that the white guy who was just killed by ICE might be racist. So I haven't even seen nobody even hint at having the audacity to suggest that. So I close.
Why I say that, though, that's the same thing. That's the same thing, because people would say, oh man, you just out here engaging in militant extremist rhetoric, case that just and you're heathen. You don't even have reverence for a lost life. He just passed away, family still mourning and all that, tragic circumstances. Why would you even say such a thing? You just hate all white people. Just any white person, you would say that. No. They plastered this white fella's did, just like Renee Nicole Good. They plastered his death all over the news, so I had to read about it. When they forced it on me, they said that this white fella, he was born and raised in Green Bay. Oh, because I don't sit around and watch TV. Hey, them Bammer, loser Green Bay Packers are not in the Super Bowl. Go 12s. Seattle Seahawks, we going to the Super Bowl again. I know about Green Bay not because I'm a Green Bay Brett Favre welfare cheap fan, because we read We Were Once a Family. Devontae Hart. They talked about those. Not all white peoples is racist. The lesbian white people, they can identify. Nope. We read We Were Once a Family, and a part of that book, they went to Green Bay, Wisconsin, lesbian white chicks, and they took Vontae. They were going to go and support the Packers and get the football. Remember, the lesbian white chicks got mad because Vontae got the football. I take that back. It might not have been Vontae, but one of their adopted Negro children got the football, and the lesbian white chicks got mad. We even came all the way out to Wisconsin, and we're going to root for the Packers, and they're going to give you, when they ain't even give us a football, they're going to get mad and punish the children. Well, they were already starving them, and we're going to drug and kill them, so I don't know how much more you could be punished, but they punished them because they didn't get the football. In the midst of reading about all of this, I found out, oh my goodness, Green Bay, Wisconsin is a racially restricted Hey, I was just in Wisconsin. I just told you. They don't have no niggers in Wisconsin. They pile them all up in southeast part of the state, Milwaukee, Racine. So when I found out this white fella, he was born and raised in Cheeseland, Green Bay, racially restricted region, and you're a racist suspect. That would be the case anyway, but now, oh, for sure. For sure. I know this fella heard all kinds of racist jokes growing up in Green Bay. Please put that on Brett Favre. Why would you say such a thing? And I said the same thing about Renee Nicole Good. She's classified as white. I'm supposed to roll around on the floor? Because if anything, if these were two Negroes who had got killed, would you even know their names? Philando Castile on that. Anyway, we'll be here tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, neutralizing workplace racism. And then Friday, Char Adams, Black-Owned, loving it. Loving it. And we should be getting to where Dr. Welsing and or Mr. Fuller could and or should hop into the book at the point where we're at now. I don't think that's going to happen, but this is about where they should pop into the book. But that'll be Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And we will be here on Saturday. We'll be here one way or the other. We might be here with a white guest, which, cool in the gang, let's get to it. Or we would just compensatory call in. But either way, we will be here on Saturday. But we might have a white guest. So it would just be 8 p.m. Eastern. And what does it mean to be white? And matter of fact, we might do the same thing again as all white people racist. And in fact, that discussion, I would much rather have that conversation with white people, because non-white people, we are so confused and victimized at this point. That concept is difficult for our tiny little brain computers to even process. A lot of times we get hostile, and it is a lot to. Ain't no white allies. Sorry about it. Mike Hannon, you heard that's about the best that you can hope for. That maybe for 2 days he doesn't call you a Negro. Maybe for 2 days he doesn't think you're lazy. Maybe, or at least he doesn't say it out loud. Maybe, and he goes back off to his sundown town and practices law, and to help his white friends, white sisters and brothers, evade the law for mistrading you and your cousins. That's about the best you can hope for. Any hoodles, we'll be here mañana, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I did learn quite a bit from the book we read today. The dogs, how easily it is to manipulate black people. The history of these local police departments and their surveillance units, like, wow, it is extensive. And the work, I've seen this so many times with racial purges, when they go and kick all the black people out of a town, or with the police department. We've been spying on these Negroes for like the last 30 years. Ooh, they asking for the records. Let's burn all this. White people are so slick at, we're ignorant, we didn't even know. Oh, we burned all that, we didn't even know. They are so good at that so that they can lie. That's one of the biggest lies. I told you, we're ignorant. We don't know nothing about racism. Nah, man, you lie. You lie and you lie and you lie. Burn the records so that we don't get to see how much you knew about the system. And like I've seen that so many times, even in North Carolina, when they killed 5 people, 1 of them black, 4 of them white people, suspected racists, all of them. But when they killed these 5 people, same thing. The local police department had been spying on all these people for like months, maybe even years. And they allowed this event to happen. This is North Carolina, 1979. They allowed all this violence to take place, the Klan to go in and kill these people because they hoped they would kill the black leader. His name just escapes me because I wasn't planning to talk about this. But it's exactly what we talked about today, the corruption with the local police departments and them spying on people who attempt to counter racism. But they had all this happen in 1979. They purge the records. We even talked about the same thing with Mississippi. There, it wasn't even law enforcement. These were just regular citizens. They called it the Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission. These are just regular citizens. They don't have a badge, police, none of that. We just practice white supremacy racism, and we organize a private club with taxpayer money to go around and spy and sabotage and terrorize black people. But sophisticated, not like the Klan, but sophisticated. And then the same thing when people go to investigate, and what sort of records did y'all have? Trash, throw that in the garbage, trash, get the shredder, all that, burn it, lost it. All of that is lying. They call that deliberate and willful omission of the truth. No one does this better than people classified as white. When they go in and have kicked all the black people out of towns, they even have books where they will go and destroy the newspaper archives so that you can't go 40, 50, 100 years later and go and see, dang, they had this in the paper where they kicked all the black people out of town and killed 100. No, all of it. Yeah, I think even with the Black Wall Street, they have reports that that's the case. If you go and try and get some of the old newspapers from like 1920, 1921, when that happened, it'll be empty. How did that happen? Usual suspects. White people are not ignorant and ain't no exceptions. We'll get to it later. Much obliged for the folks tuned in. Hope it was worthy of your time and energy. You can retire Gus T. Now, where are the programs where it's a black person, they talk to white people, talk about white supremacy, racism. They talk about, hey, is all white people racist? Calmly, scientifically, no name calling, evidence-based. If they got that, I would love to listen. Maybe I can pick up some tips. That's it. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. That comes up in this book. Oh my God. They go and they get the spies and infiltrators to do everything. Sometimes the niggers are so boring with their counter-racist attempts, which would probably be the case with Gus T. They don't have anything to report, so it'll be, well, they drunk Mad Dog 2020. We'll put that in there. Or they were puffing on the reefer. We'll put that in there. And some of them, they did that. They locked them up for like 30 years on reefer and conspicuous, suspicious reefer charges. But that would be another reason. Sobriety would be best, because sometimes Whitey will be desperate. Anything will do. Lucy, I mentioned area, anything will, any justification. Cigarettes, that's okay, wait a minute. Sobriety would be best. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cows signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. No problem. You're a victim. Man, I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my condition. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.